please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's on film. Good push.
Welcome to tonight's Arundecoit Planning Board meeting. Please be aware of the fire exit, which is to your left of the room. In the event of an emergency, please move in a calm and orderly manner and fashion down the stairs, and do not use the elevator. The meetings are recorded for the purpose of a record and minutes, so please identify yourself each and every time you come to the podium and speak into the microphone. The board will follow the items in the order that they appear on the agenda. Extra copies are near the door. After the case has been called, the applicant and/or representative shall come to the podium, identify him or herself, give his or her address, and present their case. The planning board members will have an opportunity to question the applicant. If this case is a public hearing, it will be open to the public for input, at which time anyone wishing to speak to the board regarding this application will come to the podium, identify themselves along with their address, and direct their questions only to the board. Once all public input has been completed, the applicant or site representative will be given an opportunity to respond to the public input. Once all public input has been completed and all questions have been satisfied, the case will be closed for public input, and the board will then move on to a decision. No further input is allowed at that point. And with that, Michelle, will you please call the first item?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item on our agenda is case number PB 1809-1. Upon the matter of request by the Art Center of Rochester, LLC, for revised site plan approval associated with the change of use to convert the existing building into an art center on premises 563 Titus Avenue in a mixed-use commercial district.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Chris Blaine. I live at 200 Pinewood Trail in Arundecoit. And this is for 563 Tice Avenue.
Could you just please go over the project for the
Yes,
sake of the
it is, we're planning on opening an art center. Both my wife and I are certified art teachers in New York. I have taught in West Arundecoit this past year and previously in the city school district. We are planning on opening a school for not only children but up to adult age, people with special needs. Also have drama camps, after-school clubs, things like that. We will offer on Sundays parties for children that we will cater to and be an art theme.
Okay. Thank you for the time you spent in front of the board, and I saw you sent a letter. Do you want to just go over the things in the letter that you said you were going to do based on the workshop?
Yes, I have, and if I could probably leave this with the secretary, just the gooseneck lighting we talked about, that I've looked at about purchasing. Also, which I think I wrote in the letter, I would like to be able to, if the board agrees, to have a coming soon banner put up within 30 days of opening or something like that. And then also if it's possible, signage to be added at a later date on the southern facing wall of the building for more visibility of traffic on Hudson Avenue, to be able to see where the art center is.
Okay. Regarding the banner, I'm going to defer to staff. We've never had that request before, that I remember.
Typically, it doesn't have to come before the board because of its temporary in nature. It's usually for the coming soon. It's a temporary sign, so that's not something that typically requires board approval, especially when it's hung inside the window for a short period of time.
Okay.
So that answers your question. With that, is there any questions for the applicant? Brad?
Did you bring examples of the light fixtures?
Yes.
Could you send those around, please?
Yes.
Thanks.
You have no other questions?
That's it for me.
Barry?
I'm good.
Michael? Alan?
Couple things. On the northeast side of the building are some brackets that obviously held some HVAC equipment at one point.
Yes.
They just look like a hazard to me if somebody walking by. Do you have any plans immediately for those?
The landlord recently removed one of those Mitsubishi air conditioner units, and he said he's coming back to clean that up and repair it, so it's,
Excellent.
yes.
That'll be helpful for you. I know that we got some information from a citizen over there about the dumpster, and I understand that that actually isn't within your control.
No.
Okay. And then it was all open. I'm sure you'll be calling the landlord to let him know, because I'm sure your customers will let you know. The fluorescent light that's underneath the overhang,
Yes.
what's the plan for those?
He is removing those.
So those will be
Yes,
no longer used?
we don't need them, and he feels that they're just an energy user, and he doesn't need them anymore.
Okay, and then, do we have any design on the, south-facing sign to take a look at? Or is that just something
Except
for
for
the
that
future?
vague thing I sent you, it pretty much would just have our logo with possibly an arrow if that's available. Yeah, it would have the Art Center logo with either an arrow going left or right.
Is it this you're referring to?
That's our logo, yes, the black and white.
Yeah, that part,
And then the package you
is
just
it
got.
gonna be painted on? Is it gonna be?
No, it would be a metal sign, probably a 3x5.
Is it gonna be lit? Do we know how it's
It
gonna be
will
lit?
not be lit, no.
And
There's already a
it's gonna
Mark's
be
Pizzeria
3x5?
one. Yeah.
And how's it going to be attached to the building?
The landlord, the way he attached Mark's Pizzeria and also the aquatic center that's moving in, it looks like it's bolted into the wall. I don't know particulars on how they attach, but that's what it looks like. Yeah, there's a picture of the Mark's one.
So that's what you're asking us to consider
Yeah, if
for
it's
you tonight.
possible to put to the left of, I think it's to the left of the aquatic sign on the left. So it faces like the east open door of the DMV.
Okay. Right. Those are my questions for the moment.
And Alan, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but there's a picture.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had nothing on here. I know that was a consideration, but I just wanted to make sure.
Sure. Spence?
Would the gooseneck lights you're proposing be used on both signs or just the flat sign?
Just the front flat sign, we are looking into some sort of cantilever overhang LEDs that would just project down onto the hanging sign.
To eliminate those two uplights?
Yes, right.
Okay, thank you.
Which one is he using?
Michael? And I apologize, which one did you pick? I didn't-
It looks like we might just use the hood part, because there's already a pre-existing conduit there, or that's how you call it, but we would attach that to it, because those are more for a wall unit. So to use that, we would either attach it to the pre-existing wiring, or just use the piping that's there and maybe darken it up and then put the shade over that.
So you're not going to use you may not use any of these?
No, we would use one of the shades, like the hood, the design.
Okay.
Maybe not the gooseneck piece, because we're not coming off the side of the building, we're coming off like a electrical piece coming up.
No, but we're just gonna add.
Any more questions? Any more questions? Okay. With that, please have a seat. We'll
Thank you.
open the public hearing. Anybody who would like to come and talk about this?
Good evening. My name is Ann Burns, and I live at 199 Bellhurst Drive. And I'm here this evening speaking on behalf of the HIP group, helping Arundequoit Plan for Progress. We've been working for the past 20 years advocating for the Titus Cooper Hudson neighborhood. And we're here to commend the Blaines for selecting this location in the neighborhood as the Art Center space. And we think this business will be a welcome addition to the neighborhood. The proposed design for both the sign on the building and the perpendicular hanging sign complies with all the design guidelines for this district. We haven't seen the sign that's going to hang on the back side of the building, but we know that the ones that are proposed for the front will add elegant style and positive drama to this area near the corner of Hudson Avenue. We also appreciate that the applicants are reusing the bracket from the subway sign out there instead of being disrespectful to the environment and throwing things away to recreate the wheel. We understand from, we inquired with the planning department that the signs are going to be manufactured from aluminum and plastic. And especially after last Friday's winds, just want to confirm that these are going to be heavy enough to limit any damage, because we don't want the Blaine's investment being damaged in terms of the signs. We also appreciate the lighting and the board's advocacy for that, for these signs. And we believe along with the interior planned renovations, we just think it's going to enhance the attractiveness of the area. It's really going to be a welcome addition to the neighborhood, very unusual, and just fits perfectly with mixed use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to address the board?
Good evening, Jeff Goldblatt, 128 Parkside Crescent. I am speaking this evening as an independent solid waste advisor. As this is a site plan review, a portion of the site that needs attention rather urgently is the east side of the building, specifically the area in and around the dumpster enclosure and the HVAC portion, which was addressed earlier. 7 years ago, the building owner drew up plans to address the eastern portion of the building. This is his original drawing. 6 years ago, he reached out to the town and said that he wanted to move forward on this and that he wanted to inquire how to go forward as far as the boards are concerned. No action was ever taken by the building owner, and this area has continued to deteriorate ever since. Access to the dumpster is restricted and has become rather filthy as a result of the grease container located immediately behind the dumpster. There has been a vector problem in the past as well. At the request of our assistant town planner, Donna Martello, a few years ago, she and I, she asked for recommendations from me as to how this could be addressed as far as the dumpster situation is concerned. Her information is, as of last week, is out in cyberspace someplace. Regardless, there are two issues that I raised in the memoranda, which is the logistical issue as far as trash and the lack of recycling at this building, as well as the public safety issue, which also needs to be addressed. I'll do public safety first. Attached to the memoranda that I gave you, and I know board members have seen those, is the situation with this building is regarding to what may or may not be behind the building, especially when you're driving east on Titus Avenue. The building is pre-existing, non-conforming. The building owner is clearly not the fault. And for those watching, when the phrase pre-existing non-conforming is used, that means a commercial structure built in the town of Arundequoit pre-1964. What I've sent to the board, and if you want to see the actual pictures, I brought them with me, is what happens when you're driving east on Titus Avenue and all of a sudden a 40-yard Packer truck appears out of nowhere from behind the building. I've personally witnessed 2 near misses at this intersection, and when it's you in a car versus a 40-yard truck on a heavy Mack chassis, the result is not pleasant. I know because it happened some years ago on Ridge Road West. That was reported on television news. This portion of the situation can easily be resolved by the property building owner calling his hauler, which is currently Suburban Disposal, doesn't matter which company, and ask that this building be cleared at 7 in the morning, which is the earliest start allowed per section 192 of our code. Currently, it's being resolved, being serviced in the 1 o'clock-ish hour when there's more traffic on the road. At 7, the school buses haven't started rolling urgently to pick up children. The traffic isn't as heavy, and switching to the earlier pickup time will eliminate the public safety issue, which is in place right now. Turning to the enclosure itself, there's a couple of different ways that this can be resolved besides cleanup of the area and power washing to get up as much of the grease as possible. The easier solution would be to enter into a sharing agreement with the owner of the 545 building to utilize the Hudson Avenue enclosure, thus eliminating the Titus enclosure entirely. They split the cost, and the tenants of both buildings, 545 and especially 563, where some of them have to walk all the way around to get to the Titus enclosure, that goes away. I understand that that is easier said than done for a variety of reasons not germane to this case. If that type of arrangement cannot be worked out, then we go to Plan B. That eastern side of the building needs to be cleaned up and power washed. The fencing comes down and does not get reused. The container is removed by the current hauler back to their Spencerport facility to be completely reconditioned and used elsewhere. There is an overhang on the eastern side of the building with a 30-inch gap that serves no real purpose. If that is sawed back to, let's say, plus or minus 3 inches, then there is ample room for 2 6-yard dumpsters to be placed deeper into the property. One for trash, one for commingled recycling, where there has been none up till now. And also, this would help the county achieve the 60% goal that they've promised the state. So everyone needs to step up their game, including this particular business. There's a pipe, and I noted this in my comments, besides the roof cutback, that has to be ascertained as to whether that is currently being used or whether that can be capped and closed and or mounted into the wall so it doesn't get hit. There's ample room to drive the dumpsters back, front to back. The width of a 6-yard dumpster with the blade pockets is 83 inches. The wall measures 126 from the western double door to the wooden wall. So there's plenty of space to do this. And as far as the grease situation is concerned, the company involved is Buffalo Biodiesel. That container, which could continue to pose a vector problem as it has in the past, needs to be removed and replaced with a couple of 55-gallon drums that their guy seems to have a better issue with. There's also a couple of others that the same company needs to remove from town. One is a 2256 Hudson, which is the ESL redevelopment project this board recently wrapped up work on, and another one at 850 East Ridge Road, which is supposedly another restaurant that's never going to happen. Code enforcement is aware of this, and so is the fire marshal. And there's also an issue with the grease at 563 is what state law requires as far as how far away from the building that has to be. Right now, it's sitting right on top of the building. The fire marshal is aware of this and was going to speak as of last week with Donna Martello to find out exactly what state law requires. It's possible that it is not in compliance with the state fire code. So along with, and I would agree with Mrs. Burns's comments that this is a welcome addition to the neighborhood, and we wish the applicants every success. But as part of this overall dealing, I wouldn't want these folks dealing with that enclosure in the condition it's in. nor do the people that they're planning to hire. This is something that is long overdue and on a list of quite a number of dumpster enclosures missing in action in this town. That's a town board issue that need to be resolved. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to any of those comments? It's optional. Yep, please.
As for the dumpster, I have no idea. The priors, the question
Please
about
direct
signage.
it to the board.
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry.
That's okay.
The question about signage, it's a thin aluminum material with, a lightweight, heavy-duty plastic that is completely enclosed in some sort of laminate. And then that will be bolted to the actual, framing or whatever that is on the front. The hanging sign is not a separate piece, it's just one piece of aluminum that's a little thicker. That will have two bolts in the top with chains attached, and then a single bolt with a chain at the bottom to keep it from swinging. That's it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
That carried, this is seeker.
You have seeker in front of you for 563. There should be part 2 and part 3. Would you like me to provide a quick overview?
Yeah, and before we get to that, regarding the comments, with the dumpster, that's all gonna be covered by code enforcement.
So there's there are two dumpsters located in the vicinity of this property. I was looking at the one that's clearly off the property. There appears to be another smaller one that may be on 563. However, the applicant before you is one of the tenants and not the owner of the property, so wouldn't have the ability to make the changes or any, to address it, so it really becomes it's more of a code enforcement issue. And dumpster enclosures are something that are actually approved and reviewed by the, Director of Community Development per the, chapter 192.
And has this been forwarded to them?
I have, it's been forwarded to the director so she can take a look at it,
Okay.
all right?
Oh, I do need to close the public hearing, thank you.
Can I ask one question, Mr. Chair, of the staff about the TV? Is there any light emission regulations on that? I mean, I don't have any problem per se of the TV. It's supposed to be 1 foot away from the window according to the description that we were presented with.
This
The
board
light
has, you have
emitting.
complete discretion, as far as, there is no, and I can take a look and double check the code. I'm not aware of any limitations, in terms of, that, when you look at the requirements, for all of the sign types, the standard is, it's pretty wide open, because anything in this district and the other specialty districts in the town, come to this planning board for review and approval.
So
So-
we're gonna consider the television a sign?
Let me take a look, I can take another closer look at the code.
'Cause I didn't see anything in the code for,
Yeah, and so
Signage.
it can be a bit of a judgment call. I mean, it depends on what's being depicted. In some ways, it can be interpreted more of like as art, as an art, sort of presentation. If you think about things you might see in a museum, or
that part I don't wanna get involved with because I don't think that that's a governmental
Right.
function.
right. So then that it's a little bit of a discretionary, gray area as far as when the TV is an installation of art versus when it's a form of, sort of signage or advertising.
Can I ask, Mr. Chair, the applicant to explain to us what his intention is? Is it a commercial intention or an educational intention? I assumed it was gonna be educational from his
Normally, after we
representation.
close at this, we don't bring the applicant back up. I'll ask legal, can we bring the applicant back up for some clarification?
If you wanted to reopen the public hearing, you could do that. I would suggest opening the public hearing though, if you're gonna ask him questions.
Because you just made me close it. No, it's okay. I'm gonna reopen the public hearing. We'll get back to the audience to see if anybody else wants to address anything, but could the applicant please come back up to the podium?
The question was, if it, well,
Do you intend on using it for commercial use to advertise your business, or is it educational? My understanding from reading your representation to us is you were going to do representation of the business.
yes, it would be, it would show what programs were available. And one question that was brought up was, it would be a distraction to passerby, if it was kept on like a 60-second rotation as a slide. I think it wouldn't be a distraction, and it would be set back with contrast brought down, so it wouldn't, unless you're on the street walking, you wouldn't be able to see it.
Does that answer your question, Alan? Or we can always bring them back up.
No, that does. I mean, you're not gonna sell space to a vendor that would be inside your spot, so you could sell their
Not at all.
wares or anything like that. Okay. I was more interested in what it was gonna be looking like outside.
Anybody else from the board have any questions on that? Since I reopened the public hearing, if there's anybody from the audience that wants to readdress the board, now's the time. You're all set. Thank you. Since there's no one else, I'm going to close the public hearing.
It does kind of remind me of when we did the Arundequoit Cooperative Nursery, and there was the space for the extra sign below, and we had put restrictions on what could go there and how. I don't remember the exact details, but it was kind of the same idea in that you have this extra piece that I think we said something like that they couldn't advertise anything besides their open house or something like that on that piece. Does anyone else remember that case?
Yeah, it had to be directly related.
Yeah, it was that entity's functions.
Right.
You couldn't have.
So I only bring that up because that might be something we consider with this, that the only thing that goes on that television screen are things that are directly related to their business rather than something else that they might be promoting, or like Mr. Richard said, selling advertising space on that monitor. I don't know, just a thought that I had.
I don't think that that's unreasonable, and I think that sounds within what the applicant was asking us to consider.
Okay. And I'll get back to the seeker.
So before you have a draft part 2 and part 3 of a short form EAF. In there, we review the fact that this is a site plan associated with a new use. There are very minimal changes being proposed physically, that the extent of which is new signage, which is in keeping with the district guidelines and the overall theme and intent for this particular zoning district. And because of that, there's only minor changes. The use is compatible with the district, isn't associated with any significant changes in traffic or other things compared to the prior use of this location, which was a restaurant, takeout, dine-in type of establishment. So for that reason, we're recommending a negative declaration.
Board members have any questions? With that, somebody like to do the seeker motion?
Mr. Chair, on PB 1809-1, upon the matter of request by the Arts Center of Rochester LLC for revised site plan approval associated with changes in use to convert the existing building into an arts center on premises 563 Titus Avenue in the Muck, I recommend that we do a negative declaration on listed action.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. entertain a motion now.
Upon the matter, or, case PB 1809-1, upon the matter of request by the Art Center of Rochester LLC for revised site plan approval associated with a change of use to convert the existing building into an art center on premises 563 Titus Avenue in a mixed-use commercial district. I move that the board approves said request. Do we have any conditions?
What are we doing about that back sign? I'm not real keen about doing a back sign without seeing the sign. And it's not in the application. It was written in the letter and part of the narrative, which is not the application. Anybody else that comes to this board in that district has to come back for the sign.
So we were
I'm
trying to
not-
make it easier for the applicant. that
I
they might
understand that, but I don't know exactly what that sign is gonna look like. I have a description of it, but I don't know what it is. And are we asking, I think that we're setting a precedent here, that we're approving a sign and we're gonna have to give somebody that authority to say, yes, you can go ahead and put that up, or can he just do it on his own?
This was to keep him from having to come back to the board.
I understand what you're,
If you want to say that you don't want to do it, I personally don't have a problem with it, especially with an art studio. I don't have an issue with it at all, but it's up to the board.
I think when we talked at,
Yeah.
Could you not leave that with the department? I mean, in part of the motion would be to address that and then leave the final approval there?
I'm fine with
We
that.
do that with other signs.
I'm
Yeah.
fine with or with not.
and I think based on what you're saying, Mike, I think we talked at workshop about the possibility of limiting the size. I think it would be appropriate. I think the applicant said it would be non-lit, so we could limit non-lit. And I think at workshop, we discussed that, you know, assuming it was harmonious with the other two signs on the property, that staff could potentially approve that, you know, based on our sign size restriction.
the only thing is that the two signs are now non-compliant with the current code. They're backlit, one of them is backlit, and then the other two are overhead lit that we're asking this guy not to do.
Well, you're talking about existing signs that are not part of this application.
And you just referred to those as long as they were,
No, I'm saying harmonious with his other two signs.
Okay.
On the front of his
then
building.
that means, yeah, if we're gonna do it that way, it has to be very clear.
That's what I meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who would like to add some restrictions?
Well, first of all, that's not in the application, so I think we need to get it into the application to begin with. Is that correct?
Well, as part of when the email is submitted as a follow-up, it's added to the record.
Okay.
So the town record with this particular application has the information that was contained in that follow-up communication to this board. So you can reference, if I believe, and I'm sorry, I gave it back to Michelle too soon, I do apologize. But if the potential maximum size of the dimension of that future signage, what you could do is indicate to be, bear with me. Oh, it's 3x3. So the applicant indicated it would be approximately 3x3 in size. And so what you could do is, you know, indicate that as a maximum limit for a future sign, and also specify that it's got to mimic the logo that's used on the other two signs that are being presented in the application, with town staff to review and ensure compliance with the conditions that are set forth. And if for some reason they have to change what, you know, that plan of action going forward, they needed to be 4x4, or they needed to be, you know, a slightly different design, then they would have to come back to this board to review an alternate.
Okay.
So I'll write it anyway somebody wants.
I would like to see the sign be 3x3 if we're gonna go ahead and approve it.
Maximum of
Right.
And I'd like it to say non-lit.
Non-illuminated.
we should say and be similar to other logo signs in application.
Can I ask one question? Would this be a permitted portion or a non-permitted? I wouldn't expect there would be a fee to it, but would he be required to
Pull a
obtain a?
building permit.
Yeah,
So every sign, after this board, they actually have to get a building permit
Got it.
for every sign, and the fee for signage, for those in the audience and watching at home, is actually based on the square footage of the signage. So after this board approves, any application for, signage, they have to actually come to the building department to pull a permit for the actual building and installation.
Yeah, did you want me to add the staff approval required?
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Brad, did you want to talk about a condition on the monitor?
Yeah, I think that there should be, I'd like to pitch a condition on the monitor for, that it's restricted to promotion of the business, or their related activities, and not for other businesses. I suppose the only other thing that I would find is acceptable on there would be like community bulletins, that's not paid for.
So I'll ask, what's the best way to say
Yeah, how do you wanna,
Yeah,
You know, I don't know that there's a restriction on that in the code. I just did kind of a cursory review of the sign ordinance. You could limit it and say that it not be that it be a non-advertising sign and non-billboard. That is a defined term in the code. But I would limit it to something like that, rather than making it very specific.
So I'm sorry, so what is non-billboard?
I would say that it can't be a billboard, as defined by the code. You know, it's not, advertising off-premises businesses. But I would limit it to something like that.
yeah, they are.
So I could use some words if you could.
I would indicate that it can't, that the sign, the monitor can't be used as a billboard or promote activities other than the Arts Center. Any commercial
what about just
activities,
directly related to?
yeah.
I can give you the definition in the code, an advertising sign or billboard which directs attention to a business, commodity, service, or entertainment conducted, sold, or offered elsewhere than upon the same lot.
Yes.
That sounds
So
perfect.
that's a
Perfect.
Yes.
Oh,
That,
So billboard,
That's what you said.
that covers it
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
so, yeah.
I'm happy with that.
So we're okay
that
with
allows
monitor
them to do
cannot?
community
And I
bulletins,
just have
and it allows them to promote
One
their
other
business,
condition,
but not sell
and that
space.
is the extinguishing of the lights 2 hours past closing and 1 hour prior to opening.
And then I have, if,
Hold on. Did you say 1 hour past, 1 hour before?
Two past,
Two
one.
past, that's what we've been doing, is 2 past and 1 before opening.
Did I hear somebody else had another one?
yeah, I don't remember this being called out specifically in the application, or if it was something that the code took care of, so let me know if it is. But we had talked at workshop about the windows remaining 80% transparent.
I thought it was in there.
I don't think that they're, so generally speaking, in other places, in other districts, the max for window signage is 20% per window, which is 80% transparent. So I think when you discussed the applicant's plans for the window decals or window signage, you liked what was presented and indicated that at max you would want to have no more than 20%.
Of it covered, yeah.
It's also in the email. It says front-facing right window logo not to exceed 20% of the window.
Right.
Okay. So Mr. Evelyn, are you okay with adding all those conditions?
absolutely.
Okay, so I have a second.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
None opposed? Thank you for doing business in Arundequoit. Much luck with the business. Thank you. Do we need a break? Or-
Next item on the agenda is case number PB 1809-2. Upon the matter of request by Passero Associates, acting as agent for Pathstone, for preliminary final site plan approval to redevelop the existing Sears building at Skyview to include plus or minus 72 senior units and construct an additional 5-story building to include 96 units on premises 200 Medley Center Parkway in a Ridge Road Planned Development District.
So the request was, after you give your spiel of what you're doing, to please let us know, through the workshop, you actually came to us with a concept plan, and then you came back to us again in a formal workshop, any of the changes you made since the workshop.
Yes, sir, I'd planned on it.
Okay, great.
All right, well, good evening. My name is Jess Sudol with Passero Associates here this evening on behalf of Pathstone, who is also here with us. On the matter of the redevelopment of the Sears building, as you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, this has been before 2 different workshops, but I will go through a fairly brief presentation just to talk about some of the various amenities with the project, the site layout, the building, et cetera, and then talk a little bit about the changes, and then kind of finish up with our proposed schedule. But as previously stated, the redevelopment project includes basically reconstructing the actual Sears footprint, which is located on the northeast portion of the Skyview on the Ridge, and constructing 76 or approximately 76 units within that actual 2-story building footprint. In addition to that, we are proposing a 5-story structure immediately to the east, which will have roughly 4.5 stories of residential, and then the lowest level will also have parking that's underneath the rest of the building. The proposed building, again, which is 5 stories, will be connected over to the existing building via a covered bridge so that the residents will all be able to move throughout the project without leaving and going outside. This project is specifically designed to serve seniors, which is defined as 55 and older, but based on our collective experience with other projects of similar nature, size, and scale, we find that the typical demographic for these is really closer to 70 years old and above. It is primarily 1-bedroom units with roughly 10% 2-bedroom units. Some of the site amenities I did want to point out is on the inside of the building, we will actually be cutting holes inside the building and constructing courtyards in order to provide windows and light and recreation opportunities for all the folks that are actually living in the redeveloped portion of that building. So we are maintaining the vast majority of the actual shell, so it is a true redevelopment project. We're not knocking the building down and then building it back up. Some of the other some of the other amenities include some better programmed green space. There's actually an increase in the amount of green space compared to what's there today. And you'll see those areas on the northwest corner of the existing Sears building and also around the proposed 5-story building. Other amenities for the project are internal to the building itself. There are a number of lounges, exercise rooms, meeting rooms, offices, and that type of thing, which will be serving those residents. And again, with the bridge connecting the proposed building to the redeveloped building, all the members of the community will be able to access those amenities while staying inside. The bridge will actually allow for traffic, including emergency vehicles such as a fire truck, to have 360-degree access and actually be able to drive right under it. In terms of traffic and lighting and some of the other seeker issues that we usually talk about, I'm going to run through those quickly. Senior housing, as this board is well aware of, with respect to traffic, is really one of the most low-impact uses you could possibly propose. The seniors that will be housing here do not drive very often, especially compared to other types of housing. And certainly when they do, it's typically outside the standard peak hours, which are 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. For comparison purposes, we took a look at, well, how much traffic was actually there when Sears was opening and functioning compared to how much traffic are we projecting as part of this project. Under proposed conditions, we're looking at approximately 34 trips during the AM peak hour and 42 trips during the PM peak hour, as compared to near 60 trips in the AM peak hour and close to 200 trips in the PM peak hour if this were to remain a retail use as it was when Sears was there. So obviously, there's a substantial reduction in not just the traffic generated by the project, but there is also, a reduction to some degree in the amount of parking that's needed for our proposed use. In terms of the drainage, again, as I mentioned earlier, we're improving drainage by adding green space to the project. Just taking impervious area and then changing it to lawn areas and landscaping reduces the amount of runoff, so that's how we are improving the conditions there. So much so that we're actually under, although it is a relatively large project, because the majority of the project exists within the Sears footprint, the amount of actual site disturbance is under an acre. So, relatively large project, but very little site disturbance, which I think most people would qualify as a very good thing. Did want to talk a little bit about some of the lighting. There are parking lot lights. And just to back up a little bit, the entire Skyview project is subject to a reciprocal easement and access agreement, something that we refer to as an REA, where essentially all of the various parcels that are within Skyview, for example, down on the other side where the call center is, or the old J.C. Penney's, or the Bonton, et cetera, are all part of this reciprocal easement and access agreement, which allows parking and utilities and access to occur across all of the parcels. And really what it does is it also allows the owner of the Skyview, Mr. Ingracia, to control the parking to the extent that they can do, upgrades and make sure that everything is properly coordinated. So he actually has a separate project where he's upgrading all the lighting, he's doing parking lot improvements and striping and that type of thing. And we're coordinating closely with him to make sure that the site lighting that we propose is consistent with the site lighting that he's going to install. And of course, they're all dark sky compliant type fixtures. I believe at workshop there was a concern, with this view here, which is looking up between the two buildings. Again, this is the bridge that comes across. What we did as a result of reviewing that situation a little bit closer is we did add a substantial amount more building lighting to really light up that corridor, and eliminated some of the bollard lightings, which were nice for ambient light, but weren't really providing the type of lighting safety that we needed. So that's one of the changes that we made, which I think is an improvement, and we can talk about that in more detail if you'd like. I mentioned the parking. The parking, pretty much, our entire site is approximately 14 acres. But south of this area here, which is the southern end of our building, all of this parking will remain untouched. And that's actually part of the agreement we have with the seller, is that we're going to maintain as much of the existing parking in its current condition and not modify it as possible, and really limit our modifications to the building footprint. There is a significant amount of pedestrian access through the project. As you can see on plans, everything is surrounded with sidewalks. It's not possible due to the grade to provide a sidewalk from this lower level that's ADA compliant that then gets you up to Ridge Road. But there is an existing sidewalk system in place where you can actually exit the building from the second story and then take a compliant, ADA compliant path to get out to Ridge Road. So residents on the first story would go up to the second story and then could go out that way. Or any of the residents coming over from the new building, stories 2 through 5, would just come down to that second level, head over to the bridge, actually, excuse me, a third level, and then cross into this portion of the building and eventually get out that way. You know, there's not a tremendous amount of recreational opportunities in the immediate vicinity of the building shell, obviously, being that it's a redevelopment project, but we are maximizing that with, again, not just these green areas on either side of the project, but really these courtyards, which we think are, quite honestly, our development team's very excited about, and we think that those present a lot of opportunities. That's actually what the rendering is down here in front of me. Did want to speak briefly on some of the changes that we did make. As we were doing, the first time we submitted the project, this building was oriented further south, approximately 60 to 70 feet. Upon completion of our geotechnical engineering, we found that in this portion of the site, there was roughly a 20 to 22 feet deep borrow pit that had all been, thank you.
Thank you, Vanna.
Which had been backfilled with, you know, debris and material that wasn't suitable for a building of this nature to bear on. And the cost of excavating all that debris and then filling it in with suitable soil that's 22 feet deep was, you know, completely impracticable and potentially a project killer. So what we elected to do was actually shift the building about 50 to 60 feet north to get this southern portion out of that fill area. And that's the most notable change that's been made. You know, the character of the development, we think more or less remains the same. It actually, we believe, improves the circulation, and it also ended up preserving more of that existing parking just south of the building, which obviously the seller would be happy to see that. Another change that we made as a result of, you know, our ongoing iterations, and I think you'll notice that the fire marshal actually picked up on this comment, is that we shortened the building by roughly 25 to 30 feet, and we actually took the units that were on the end, shortened the building, and then put some of those units on the first level. And that was really several reasons that we did that. Once we moved the building and we established all this green space here, all of a sudden that first floor became a more attractive area than it previously was. But more importantly, the vast majority of people are going to enter the project from this exit here, entrance from Ridge Road. Now when they come down into the parking lot, instead of looking at a parking garage for that particular building, which again we can still make look relatively nice, by finishing this whole end cap, it really gives a nice curbside appeal to that building, and then we kind of tuck the parking further behind south on site. So certainly from Ridge Road coming down to the project and then entering into the project itself, it's going to be a much nicer building in appearance with having those units on the first floor rather than having the garage. We did bring some building materials. You can see that the building doesn't have a ton of different materials on it. There's a fiber cement hardy plank, which is this right here, this is almost the exact color of what we're proposing. That's the light areas. You can pass these around. And then that's accented with really the wood panel, which is a rain screen system, similar to some of the other buildings that you folks have in town. I think Starbucks actually has something somewhat similar to this. So that's the palette of materials that we're proposing on using for the project, and then with aluminum trim pieces at, you know, various building elements. And I can talk a little bit about that if needed. One of the building improvements that we are making specifically on the existing Sears redevelopment is increasing the height of the parapet, approximately 3 feet. What that does is essentially allows us to block our HVAC units and screen them, which, you know, we are proposing to have the HVAC units up on the roof, which is good because we don't want them all over the place on the site. And then by extending that parapet, we are obviously, you know, improving the line of sight, so most of those will be tucked away and hidden. You know, there are people on the, you know, potential 5th floor of this building looking down on the roof that, yes, they are going to see some of those HVAC units, but quite frankly, there's really not much we can do about that. But, you know, we don't think that that's, you know, such a bad thing in the long run anyway. So with that, we have received comments from the town engineer, also comments from the fire marshal, and I believe comments from some of the folks here. Everything is not what I would consider a showstopper. It's all very easily addressable. We've started to address and cleaned up some of the, you know, discrepancies between some of the numbers on the plans, but we think we're at a pretty good place with that. So just to recap the changes, really reprogram these green spaces, moved that building up north about 50 to 60 feet, and then shrunk up the building footprint and brought those units down to the ground level, and then improved the lighting most specifically in the corridor of these two buildings. We are on a pretty aggressive schedule, as most projects that come before this board are. But just to give you a little background of that, we do have a funding application that is due in a couple weeks in October. And if we are successful with that, which we're very optimistic that we will be, we could potentially receive our funding award by the end of the year, which would then allow us to start construction next spring. So we're very optimistic that we'll be able to follow through with that schedule. Then after that, we do have about a 2-year construction schedule to complete the building. The redevelopment project will be happening at the same time that the new project is built. So all that will kind of come out together, and pretty hopeful we can get started on that in the near future. With that, of course, be happy to answer any questions on any of our application materials or any of the changes presented tonight.
And I apologize, could you go over the changes to the building just one more time? And you said it's gonna have a different look and feel.
No,
to
not
it.
different look, same look. The difference are the building was moved to the north, so it was previously down here. But as a result of the geotechnical testing, we moved it up. And the different look, I'm sorry, I did say that. Without specifically, we're not changing materials or anything like that. But right here in this northern third or so of the building, we're gonna be putting actual units on the ground level, which will give it a more finished look from where you enter the project and from Ridge Road.
Is that adding units to this, or is it?
No, it's not, because we took those units, we kind of chopped off the end of the building, and then we took those 8 units, which was 2 per floor on 4 floors, and put them underneath.
Can I just follow up, Mr. Chairman, on one thing you just said? So you're talking about the end looking a little different, and if I'm understanding you correct, in that view that we're looking at in that rendering,
Yeah, it's still the old rendering.
but instead of like the split face block or the whatever you've got, smooth face block in the bottom,
Yeah, this would all be
Finishes would
carried
carry
down,
down.
right, so
Okay.
you wouldn't see all that,
Yep.
right? This would all be carried down.
okay, thanks.
With that, is there any other questions? Mike?
Yeah, we talked in the workshop about handicap parking in the garage of the 5-story apartment building, and I don't see it denoted on the plans.
Yeah, it's not shown on this particular plan, but we do have 4 handicap parking stalls proposed in the garage. It says it in the site data, which is part of the plan set, it just didn't show up on this here, but we can certainly plan on including those 4 spaces.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a couple questions about these elevations. I know we had talked a little bit about them at workshop. Are these, is this the south elevation or is it the west elevation?
That, I can't quite see, that looks like the north elevation. Oh no, that is the west elevation where you're only seeing the top floor, because the second floor off to your left is down below.
Okay, so that means I think that there's a couple labeling errors in the elevations. Have those
There
been?
could be, right, because the one on the top is the east elevation, which shows that step down.
Yeah. Do we need to have those fixed, or is that important, or is that should be noted, or?
So what what this board can do is, in terms of overall look and finish, if the designs that are being presented with the changes that are being described, the final plans can be submitted to the town to make sure that the elevations are reflected to address those changes.
Okay.
Generally speaking, though, the elevations are provided more to give you an idea of what the look and finish are gonna be of the building, so
Yeah, I
you know
think
what to
that's
expect.
fine. I just didn't know for record keeping purposes.
Yeah, so we would ask them for the final, so, just so, again, for everybody watching at home, when, the planning board makes its final decision, applicants after the fact have to present the town with the final, set of site plans that the town staff signs off on. Planning and zoning staff ensure that all of the conditions that were outlined by this board are reflected in the final plans that are submitted for signature, and then we keep the signed copy that sort of addresses all of those things. So what we could ensure is that a set of the elevations get updated,
Okay.
be labeled correctly, and that they're part of the final record for the file.
That's all.
Great.
So Carrie, is it possible for the public to see these elevations? Is there an easy way to do that? I realize they can't see them.
I can, sure. Let me put them on the
Put 'em
board behind. Yep.
I'll donate mine, but I do think these don't reflect that change you talked about. Is that correct?
No, those are the originally submitted ones, that's correct. The final ones that are submitted to the building department for permit would reflect that change. But it's still, actually, the Sears building itself is still the same. The only thing you're not picking up on really is just that change to the end cap. Which, if you just look at the other part of the building, you'll see what it looked like.
Can I ask a couple questions on your EAF? On page 4, it claims there's gonna be no dredging or any movement of the soil. Is that true, or is that not true on the form that I'm looking at?
There won't be any dredging, no, I think that, doesn't that question, I don't have the EAF in front of me, say excluding, you know, earthwork that's required for general site preparation, which is all that we would require?
Yeah, so it would not include the sewer system then, or any of that stuff, right? That would be considered site preparation?
Correct.
Okay. The water usage, I'm just a bit confused, I don't really care. You have taken in 22,000 gallons, but only pushing out 20,000 gallons?
Correct.
What happened to 2,000 gallons a day?
It comes from evaporation, water, actual potable water
Okay.
consumption,
I just know that,
turning on a hose bib outside. Yeah, general rule of thumb's around 85 to 90% of water usage ends up in the sewer.
okay.
And actually, some sewer districts assess their sewer rates that way, that don't.
On page 8, question, and it talks about the lights, are there only 30-foot lights around the, I know that you just described that to us. I'm not real sure, I want to get a better handle on the lighting situation.
Yeah, we're proposing right around our building envelope with 30-foot tall poles with fixtures that would be complementary with what the owner of the rest of the mall is doing. And then there will also be 15-foot high building mounted fixtures on the building itself of the similar building head with that dark sky compliant LED light fixture.
Okay, and do we know what those fixtures look like?
Yes, I believe there's a site detail, but they're the fairly standard that you see now. They have a very flat profile with a LED that goes down that you see in most,
Because right now
somewhat
what's on
commercial
the site
applications.
is those big globe, I think there's
Right,
3 or
that's
4.
all part eventually going to be replaced.
Okay.
Not those things that are ugly.
What is the HVAC system, and I know that I'm stepping a little bit, on the new building look like? I understand from the description on the EAF, or in one of these forms here, what it's gonna look like on the old building. What is that on
It'd
the
be a
new?
similar system with rooftop units.
Okay. And then, do the apartments on the north side of the new addition, do those go all the way up, all 5 floors?
Yes, they do.
Okay. I'm sure that's not all my questions, and we'll probably reopen the hearing and call you back up, but that's it at the moment.
Sure.
Can you clarify how many units approximately are in the 5-story building?
96.
Okay. I'm gonna go back to HVAC for a minute. So, can you talk a little more about what the system, I mean, is it a couple of large systems? Is it 96 small systems? Do we know what we're doing
It
there?
actually is more like 96 small systems, which have smaller condensers, and those are actually, we need to do it on almost a per unit basis, because that's a lot more efficient in terms of energy consumption. So it's a VRV system that actually has each one will have a rooftop unit that's then piped in.
So it's a relatively speaking, it's a residential style.
Correct,
It's the
yeah.
same thing we got outside that's 30 inches by 30 inches by 3 feet or.
Right.
So what is the proposal, if we look at these elevations for the 5-story, how are we gonna screen that? It looks like that's essentially a flat roof.
Well, this coping also acts as a parapet to where the roof level is actually down here closer. Sorry. So you see that we have this actual feature on the top of the roof, which is tough to tell on the sides of the building. Here's here on the 5-story. This coping actually extends up past it so that, given that it's 5 stories, if you're anywhere on the ground, even without that coping, it would be tough to see. but we just extended that up a couple of feet to really cut off the line of sight so you wouldn't see them.
So there's nothing beyond approximately 24-inch parapet?
Correct.
Okay, because there is massive grade change around this site. So, I mean, I would typically agree with you that, you know, from the ground, normally, you're not going to see a whole lot on a 5-story building, but there's some areas around this site where there's 30 foot of grade change.
Yeah, there's about a 14-foot retaining wall that's immediately to the east of us with some businesses and residents then up on top of that.
Right.
But even with that being 14 feet and having the residences, with us being up at 55 to the top of the roof, you still do have that angle. They're certainly not looking down on us. They're still looking up. With that said, you know, the zoning district allows actually for us to go up to 200 feet, but we're only down at 55.
Yeah, I understand that.
But it'll still, those units will be up above eye level of even the higher grade that's higher to the east, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, and can you talk a little more about what the screening would be on the former Sears building?
Well, it would essentially be the same approach, which is building up that parapet with the, you know, like aluminum clad coping.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the exterior again for just a minute if we could. The kind of faux balconies or porches.
Yeah, we call them,
Go ahead.
yes, go ahead.
The material on those?
Yeah, those would be, we're looking at like kind of a black aluminum for the Juliet balconies. Just so everyone knows, you know, those only extend about 18 inches out. They allow you to open the doors and kind of, but they're not, you know, full balconies.
Okay, perfect. The storefront window framing, is that going to be dark aluminum or clear aluminum?
We're still working for that detail. I think they're shown as fairly dark in the current rendering.
I'm sorry, which ones are you talking about?
I was asking about pretty much all the storefront, all the window framing on the buildings, whether it was going to match the black aluminum or whether it was going to be like a clear aluminum. All it really says on here is aluminum. That was my question.
Did you have a preference, or?
No, just trying to understand what the look's going to be, what the different colors and materials are going to be. What is the face stone down at the bottom of the parking garage?
Right now, it's a split face CMU.
Face,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
And that aluminum will be white, by the way.
white?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I think you mentioned in a response letter and I think tonight that
I think you can have this back.
the finished material will be similar to the Starbucks Chipotle in town.
Correct, that wood
The
panel.
wood. So maybe I'm incorrect, but I think what you gave us tonight is truly a composite,
Right.
and I think that actually may be real wood because that is separate issue, but that's fading significantly.
No, we're looking at various composite products, not real
Not
wood
a real-
products.
okay,
I've
good.
just
I
meant
just
in
wondered.
look, not
Yeah, I don't want
before it faded.
I don't want you guys or us to have to worry about maintenance on that stuff. Is there any particular switching to the little gazebo area, which I really appreciate you guys adding after our conversations? Is there a specific reason why there's no sidewalk that connects to the parking lot?
Here?
Yeah,
No specific reason. I mean, I don't see a reason why we couldn't add a little piece of sidewalk over there. I think that would actually
just
make
thinking
some
if there's
sense.
an outdoor.
Yeah, if
party.
someone's coming to visit and
Yeah.
someone was out here, they could just scoot right over. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all I got for now. Thank you very much.
Anybody else have any questions?
The revision date on here?
At workshop, we talked about the crosswalk material. What do you have there for across the drive? Yeah,
Crosswalk?
yeah.
That crosswalk is actually not on our property, and it is going to be subject to, you know, review and improvements when Skyview, you know, does all their improvements. But this dark line right here
Excuse
follows
me,
the edge of pavement.
just need you to use that mobile mic if you
That
could.
dark line over there that follows the edge of pavement
That's
is
your property line.
property line.
Okay. And then there is no landscaping improvements to the parking area and the south end of the property.
Correct. We're not touching that whole area. Again, that falls under the same kind of will be part of the holistic landscaping and parking improvements done by the owner.
But isn't that on your property, not his?
Yes, but it's on property that's subject to that REA, which makes it, we're basically, as a part of that REA in our agreement with the owner, we're really only allowed to make site improvements to this limit here and then up to the north.
Okay.
So I have a few questions. I just want to confirm, you're not going to have like a general meeting room like they do over on Culver Road that you're going to rent out to outside agencies to bring other people in
No.
on buses?
No, the meeting's small, the meetings room will be small and pretty much, rooms for card games and for residents to use.
And public transportation, can you just go over a little bit again how that's going to be?
Yeah, while there's not an actual bus route that comes into the Skyview property, there will be staff that work with the residents on site. Will actually call a shuttle service, so if someone doesn't have a vehicle and they want to go, shopping, then they'll call and actually have that shuttle service come and pick up, 2 or 3 people that might want to, go to a certain destination.
And you're not looking for public transportation in the future? Because at the workshop, they talked about a bus coming right up to that, it was big enough.
Well, it's big enough for the shuttle bus to come there, but as far as an actual RTS bus, I don't think they would, haven't indicated that they'll be coming onto this property as far as I know.
Any other questions? Okay, at this time, if you'd like to have a seat, you can leave everything there. We'll just ask the public to come up. I'd like to open the public hearing. Anyone who would like to address this, please come to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Susan Bianchi. I live at 58 Vinton Road. Actually, this sounds like a very exciting project. I know we've been waiting for a long time for stuff to happen there. I'm here as you know, at that east end of the property, there is a residential neighborhood, and that's where I live. So I just want to make sure that that the board, the owners, the builders are aware that there is a residential neighborhood. And I guess really the main thing that I'd like to point out is, I guess I'm not quite sure how far the standalone building, how close it comes to the edge of the property. I couldn't really see that.
You can take your time and look at it now, but we'll also have them come back up and address it after you're done.
I'm wondering if the building itself, the standalone, actually, I know there's a road that goes all the way around the Skyview Mall. Skyview, I'm not going to call it a mall. And I don't know if the building then just ends where that road is. What I'd like everyone to consider is, right now, there's a fence there. There's a drop-off and there's a wooden fence. I'd have to say right now that current fence is pretty insufficient. It's a wooden fence that gets knocked down. I know at the end of my street there's pine trees that essentially are dead and really don't offer no privacy or as a barrier. So, and I don't know if this is an owner issue or if that would come with the building of, this property. If there would be something that could be done to actually improve that barrier between the residential neighborhood and, these buildings. I guess I'd be looking for something that would be higher, maybe a little more of a soundproof barrier, something a little higher, something with stronger, provide privacy, and just make it more difficult because people cut through a lot and constantly knock the fence down. And hopefully that would offer a little more privacy. I'm trying to imagine how high a 5-story building will be that close to where the residential properties are. So I don't have a good concept of how high that is. But anyway, so that's just one thing that I don't know that could be addressed, that perhaps something could be done about that barrier just to offer us, a little more privacy and something that's a little more permanent. as again, the trees that are there are useless because they're mostly dead. And the other thing is, I know we've talked about lighting. And I think from what you were talking about with the lighting, it sounds like some of it will be low enough that we're not gonna be seeing that a lot. I guess that was my other concern, is just, there's a lot of ambient light and bright just that we get from Ridge Road on the one side. And let's see, I think the tall lighting that's there right now, I mean, you can see it, but perhaps having more trees or a different barrier there, would help that. So I don't know if the upper part of the building will have lighting that would kind of carry over into the neighborhood. I guess that's it. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Anybody else who would like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Dr. Matt Fleig. I have a business at 1736 East Ridge Road. There's the Ridgeplex Commons there. I'm also the president for the association for that complex. Overall, I have to say I'm really, as I'm sure many people are, we're pleased to see that a development is taking place. We're right across the road from that, and it's an eyesore not having something more positive commerce-wise going. So overall, I'm pleased to hear the plans that are afoot. My only comment just has to do with the estimate of increased traffic, and I think it might be a little bit of an underestimate. If I understood the estimate that was offered, it sounds like it was focused just on the residents themselves. But if the average age of the residents may be around 70, we can anticipate that they're going to have needs. And so that could be family visiting, that could be visiting nurses, that could be phlebotomists coming to do home draws. There are a lot of things, if I think about my own patients that I take care of, there are services that they end up needing, when you reach a certain age. So I don't know that it's going to make a great impact on things, but it's just a thought that I would add to the sense of what the increased traffic might be. For those of us that are at the Ridgeplex Commons, if you are trying to turn left out of our property, going across lanes of traffic, it's tough to do during rush hour, morning and evening, just as it stands right now. And I know that this is just going to bring more traffic. Not that I'm opposed, just more of a comment for consideration. Thank you.
I'm sorry, sir. Sir, for the record, could you spell your last name for me, please?
Certainly. It's F-L-E-I-G.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to address the board? Would you like to please address any?
One of the biggest benefits of our site plan adjustment and moving the building to the north, I missed, and that is that we're actually moving it away from the residential area, which the last residential home is kind of this area here. And just to answer the question in terms of setback, this building will be set back over 125 feet from where that property line is. We have, sorry, I need your microphone again.
That's all right.
But the residential nearest home is right about in this area. Then we have roughly a 55-foot wide piece of property that's part of the overall mall property. And then we have our internal setback to this back corner here. So it's actually over 125 feet to that first home.
Can you point it out so she can see it?
Oh, sorry.
You can turn it.
This is getting more and more complicated. So the nearest home is right about there, and this setback is well over 125 feet to that corner. And again, the building used to be down here, but then we shifted it up. In terms of the fence, unfortunately, again, that fence is not in our property. It's part of the overall mall property, so we don't really have any control over that. While I simply respect the request, it's just not something we have any control of. There will not be any lighting up above that 15-foot building-mounted lighting height, which is really there for safety in the parking and sidewalk areas. There's no floodlights or anything like that up on top of the building, really no lights at all other than the lighting in the units themselves. In terms of how the traffic is determined, that's actually determined using the Institute of Transportation Engineering Manual. And what that group does is they actually go out region by region and they study projects that are similar to ours, and they actually have a lot of different categories, so they can get pretty specific to exactly what you're looking for, and that's how we come up with a rate, which is based on the number of units in the building. On top of that, our engineering group went out to similar facilities in and around Monroe County, one of which was actually Hobie Creek Apartments right over there. And we actually did our own study where we actually sat out there during the peak hour, both the morning and the afternoon, and counted the cars coming in, knowing that it was essentially the same demographic we'd be serving, the same type of amenities, really a good comparison. And we actually found that those rates, the actual counted rates, were about 20 to 25% lower than what we were even using in the ITE manual. So I can confidently say that the numbers that we represent are approximately 25% higher than what will even really be there. So we are certainly on the conservative side on that particular topic.
So I have a question for you. You mentioned that the landlord's gonna be doing something with the parking lot and the lights,
Correct.
and do you know that plan?
I do not know the specifics of it yet, other than they've indicated they plan on making improvements to the parking and the lighting.
Okay, so, since your residents are the ones that are gonna be looking at this unsightly fence, what would you normally do in that case, just out of curiosity? I know it's not anything you're fixing, I'm just curious as to, you were concerned about, you know, the parking lot. What would be your concern about your residents looking at this, if it's as bad as what the person said?
I am not terribly familiar with it, but, you know, it seems like if there's mature landscaping there, I'm not sure if the fence is still needed. If the fence were still needed, then obviously a new fence of some sort might be in order, but.
Well, they said something about cutting through too, so I imagine that
Right.
would be an issue. I'm just curious as to if it's unsightly and your residents are looking at it, is that something you would discuss with the landlord or?
Yeah, absolutely, and, you know, we're more than happy as part of our ongoing discussions to bring that up.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question regarding the pole lights?
Sure.
The fixture detail that's shown has an optional back shield. Would it be possible to get back and or side shields facing the residential?
Yeah, I mean, that's our typical standard operating procedures. Whenever a fixture is facing residential is when we use those shields. And we try to make sure that any of the light fixtures that are near where the residential is only go out. We don't have like a 4 head or anything like that, or a 2. We just have one that goes out with the shield.
Okay.
The sidewalk connections on the interior of the property, for instance, on the northeast corner of the building to the new development, and then underneath the pedestrian bridge, they don't appear to have any striping.
Yeah, I'm just noticing that we need to add in the striping and ramp details there.
Could we do something besides striping, like stamped dyed asphalt or concrete pad?
Yeah, sure. It's something that, you know, we could probably do. I don't have a problem with that. Usually we would use the concrete to go across.
I just think people paint them and then 2 years later it's all worn off.
Right.
Brad, where were you talking about?
So on the northeast corner of the Sears building to where it crosses the drive aisle, and then underneath the pedestrian bridge, it looks like.
Is how we got the results we got. On the plan, in the new building, there's something labeled community room or something like that. What is that?
That's that same meeting room. That's where the residents would gather to have their card night, or they have, you know, usually different activities. A lot of these places will have, you know, a sewing club or a scrapbook club, and that's usually where the residents would gather for that type of event.
Okay, and then what is differentiating the front of the garage from the living area? When I'm
firewall?
looking at that building on the east elevation and on the west elevations. Those aren't going to help you at all.
No, what's differentiating in what sense? Internally, there has to be firewall
Externally is what
separation.
I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, well, these materials will be extended down, and then we'll have some sort of probably similar to the aluminum trim piece that kind of delineates those two areas.
Are we getting rid of the water line up to the first floor, basically?
The water line?
The differential, see how you have a base, a middle, and then you've got a top on your building?
Yes.
Are we getting rid of the base part of it?
Oh, the split block part?
Yeah,
Yes.
For a portion of this, for the part that's now gonna have units, yes.
the part that's going to be,
The part that's
The
gonna have
apartments.
units will have those siding materials brought down to the first
Okay.
floor level. The part that's not will then still have it's actually an Aristocraft man-made stone. Just got clarification on that.
and then the rest of the parking lot that is actually in your possession or will be, how is that going to be maintained? Because the code actually requires you to maintain that in good condition. And I would not classify that, and I don't think you would, as good condition at the moment.
No, all the parking lot is all maintained under that REA. So it'll be maintained as part of the rest of the mall property.
By you or by the mall owner?
By the
is
mall
my
owner,
question.
but as part of our agreement, obviously, they have an obligation to do that.
All right, so that part will be taken care of?
Certainly, now that we're there and investing all this money, we're gonna make sure that's taken care of.
All right, that's what I'm asking for. Okay.
I had a question that kind of went along with Spencer's comment about this area on the west elevation. So you said you were raising this 3 feet higher than what is seen on this because this is the old elevation. You said that one of the changes where you're adding 3 more feet. Is that right? Or
Well, the change is we're gonna increase the total parapet height to 3 feet.
so this will be so if you're standing here and you're looking across that 1-story area on the former Sears from this higher level,
From up here.
yeah, all of that equipment is going to be hidden.
Well, it'll be behind the parapet, but if you were standing right here before the grade drops, kind of looking over
Right,
and down onto
yeah,
the roof,
yeah,
you'd
yeah.
be able to see it from very select areas.
Okay, because I went over there and looked today, and they had like the old Sears has this sort of turquoise thing that shields that.
Bigger units, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, again, ours is gonna be much more on the residential scale, and
Okay.
you know, with the amount that we have, it's not like we can put a single shield. I mean, we'd be putting a giant thing around the whole building, which I don't think really
Yeah,
anybody
yeah, yeah.
wants.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
So now I'm gonna close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, didn't close the public hearing.
I just had a real quick question. When construction's
To the board.
To the board.
Oh, all right. When the, when construction begins, just wondering what the timeframe, would be, you know, during the day that would be taking place.
I can actually address that as staff. So construction time is set forth in the noise ordinance for town code, and work can't start any sooner than 7 a.m. And can't exceed 10 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Generally speaking, however, from a construction standpoint, some of those hours would involve overtime pay, which typically is avoided at all costs. So general construction time tends to be between 7 and 5 p.m., 7 a.m. and 5 p.m.
And I do have a clarifying question. You said that, there's a funding application due in October,
Yes, sir.
and then you said you might get approved by end of year then,
Correct.
and you would start in the spring?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. Thank you. With that, I'm gonna close the public hearing.
For the record, he said yes, sir. He didn't have a microphone, so yes, it will be starting in the spring was his response.
Any other conversation before we ask Carrie to talk to seeker? Carrie, please. Tell me what we're looking at too, just so I can make sure.
So you should have before you a part 2, part 3, and then a narrative as well. Just so for the record, the applicant this is an unlisted action under seeker. The applicant was only required to submit a short form EAF. However, I think based on the significance of the project, they went ahead and did the full EAF, the long form. And so the town, in its response, went through and filled in the part 2 and part 3, the long form version as well. I just want to clarify, because often when we see the long form, we assume it's a type 1. It's not. It's unlisted. So we go through the form and we identify the places where we think there could be some potential impacts that need some further review. And even in some places where the town in its assessment check no, we provide an explanation in the narrative attachment just to give you some point of reference. So, obviously there's going to be some impacts potentially to land. They're altering an existing site. We identify that there might be some impacts to traffic. We indicated or transportation, we indicated there may be some impacts that need to be looked at for noise, odor, and light. And then also consistency with community character. And so what we do is, in the narrative, in looking at the information that was provided by the applicant, reviewing the comments received from Monroe County DOT, the information provided in the engineering report, I will take you through the sort of assessment or the hard look, if you will, under seeker. Land use and community character, the proposed development, it's consistent with the land use along Eastridge Road, and it's certainly consistent with the development style and type and design that's set forth in the Ridge Road Plan Development District language. And as you all remember, this is a relatively new zoning classification that was vetted. There's quite a bit of design standard that's set forth in that code, and this project meets and exceeds all of those design recommendations. When we look at impact to land, the property is reusing existing building, which is a redevelopment. It's always something that the town is a good use from an environmental standpoint. It's not creating new, it's rehabbing what's there. So therefore, there's less of an acre of disturbance with the construction of that new freestanding building. However, they're still going to need to be mindful and meeting requirements for stormwater management. There is proposed increase of landscaping and green space on site, which will help manage stormwater runoff. And so because of that and the fact that today's New York State standards for design for stormwater and are going to be required, there's very little to no impact with respect to the impact on land. When we look at impact to surface water, there's no designated floodplain there. There's no water bodies that are located on the property. On the EAF Part 1, the applicant did indicate a wetland, and that's one that's adjacent to or it's in proximity to an adjacent parcel, but this project site will have no impact to that, so there is no impact to surface water. With utilities and energy use, the applicant provided a detailed analysis of the demand for water and sewer and indicated that the planned revision to their utilities, certainly there's capacity at this site, and that they're not doing anything that would exceed or cause an expansion of a district or be a potential drain on the resources. They will have to go through other permitting through DEC and or Department of Health or Pure Waters. And so we know that there's nothing that they're doing here that would cause a moderate or large significant adverse impact. Now we look at traffic, so that's one thing. So there's new residential development. However, the information that was provided in their engineering analysis based on ITE standards, and that's the standard, the industry standard for doing traffic analysis, senior housing, it's observed and sort of in practice, but also documented in the information they provided here with the analysis, that it's less of a demand from traffic, especially when compared to the retail use of the prior site, meaning a Sears location. So even when you reuse that location for residential housing and you add more residential housing, it's still not getting anywhere close to what the traffic demand had been when it was operating as a Sears. So for that reason, we're not anticipating this project being a significant impact on traffic. I will point out also in reaching that conclusion, the site is serviced by signalized intersection at East Ridge Road, multiple points of exit and enter to the site, including the dedicated service road from Route 104. So there's many routes by which people can get to and from the location. It's also served by public transportation, and the proposed site plan does provide for bike parking, so there's multi-mode access to the location. We look at light, odor and noise. There should be no issue with odor. The two things that we did look at were potential for light and for noise. The applicant has indicated that they're going to be using dark sky compliant lighting fixtures, and that the way they're situated and the design of the lighting itself will help to minimize light spill to adjacent properties. The other factor that leads us to that conclusion is that the change in grade is actually something that will help limit the potential negative impact associated with lighting from the site. And then we looked at the potential with respect to the HVAC systems that are going to be roof mounted. For the new building, the 5-story height, the distance of that will provide relief from in terms of sound, sort of radiating to anywhere off the property. And for the existing building, we've looked at the increased parapet height as a mechanism that would help, in addition to visually shielding the individual HVAC units, would also provide some buffer with respect to sound. And the other thing that we look at, it's typically those are units that are consistent with what you might find on your home, and often smaller, because the individual units are connected to apartments that are small in size, so they don't need to be huge units to help cool or heat the inside. And so for that reason, not as noisy. They're not consistently on all at the same time, because it varies based on who's home and who isn't, and what their heating and cooling preferences might be. But based on the design of the building, we didn't feel like there was any large or moderate adverse impacts associated with the light or the noise potential for this project. Also, there's a distance factor as far as it being set down away from any other adjacent properties that aren't associated with this development. So after looking at all of the information, reviewing the plans, didn't see that there were any potential adverse impacts that were moderate or large, requiring any further environmental analysis, and for that reason, we're recommending a negative declaration. And I'd be happy to address any questions the board may have.
Any questions? Carrie, a normal, thorough job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions in general?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for our council. With regards to the reciprocal easement agreement, what will we have, or what do we have authority, I guess I'm specifically thinking about, some landscaped islands and so on in some of the parking areas. And it's, it's shown on this property, proper, if you will. But I understand the applicant is saying it's part of an REA, and I'm just wondering if you can explain that a little bit.
Sure. I don't think that these reciprocal agreements, first of all, those were not included as part of the application, so
Excuse me, Deputy Town Attorney, might you just get a
Yes,
little closer to
sorry.
your microphone? Thank you.
Those were not included as part of the application, so I don't think that, that you really need to consider that. The property owner has consented, to Passero as acting as their agent to make this application, so I wouldn't treat this any different than if, the property owner was coming in here today. You can condition your approval on whatever landscaping requirements, appropriate landscaping requirements that, you want to, and I don't think the, reciprocal easements impact that at all.
Is that restricted to within the boundaries of what they're applying for?
Yeah, so that would be limited to the parcel that they've, applied for. You can't add it to a different parcel, but, it doesn't matter that the applicant doesn't actually own the property.
I'm gonna just share information related to that reciprocal easement. The easement is based on a certain number of parking spaces being available in its entirety on the entire, multiple parcels that comprise Skyview and including the, adjacent property. And so any decision that the board makes that where parking would be reduced, I don't know if that would potentially create an issue because I'm aware that the reciprocal parking agreement has a set finite number of parking spaces that are required. And that's one of the reasons actually the applicant provided the at-grade parking under the building is so that their net parking spaces were not changed.
Sure, yeah, I mean, it could cause problems for the applicant or the property owner and how they negotiate their agreements, but I don't think it affects what the board can and can't do. But you may wanna, if you're proposing to condition your approval on something other than what's been requested, you may wanna discuss that with the applicant first, because they may have difficulty complying. But I haven't seen the agreement, so I wouldn't know.
So I guess, Mr. Chairman, something I'd just like to bring up for board discussion and see what anybody else thinks. I'm looking at the cover sheet of our set of drawings that we were provided. And, you know, the property extends on the south or the right-hand side of our page here. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hatched off asphalt areas currently. And I think I really applaud and I like the fact that the applicant has added, you know, kind of landscaped islands along the Medley Center Parkway Road. And I'm just wondering what anyone else's flavor is on converting those just hatched off asphalt areas to actual curbed islands that have, because I don't even think they'd lose any parking, quite honestly. It looks to me, if it, you know, the width of a parking spot's about 9 feet, those hatched off areas then are about 9 feet, which I think would be enough to landscape and put one tree and some rock mulch or something in there. Because if I just feel like if we don't talk about this now, we're not going to get an opportunity to talk about it. So I'm just wondering what anybody else thinks about that.
One of the things I've applauded about the design of this whole thing is the fact that, and I know Brad and I talked about it at the workshop, that they used as many London plane trees as they did. You know, it's a native species, and that's something that's a really, really great choice, in my opinion, and it's awesome to see a lot of those being planted. I would be a huge proponent of them carrying that throughout the rest of the project site. I mean, it's 6 islands, you know, but that being said, I don't know how big they need to make the island to contain that sort of, I mean, you know, they've got a pretty extensive rooting structure. I don't know how big the island has to be, and if you lose parking spots by making that hatched area into an island large enough to hold a 70-foot tree.
I would say that using the area that's hashed off, and I do know that London plane tree is typically used in urban areas because it's very tolerant to really difficult places. They're using them in the median in front of the zoo, and they seem to be doing okay there. Even if they weren't London plane trees, if they were some other type of, I agree with you. I'd like to see the consistency along Melody Center Parkway, but if it's between that and no tree, then whatever. But I think I agree with the general sentiment that I'm hearing from you two.
So you said if we were gonna go into that route, we should check with the applicant to see if there's any issues with the,
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, can you use your mic, please? Thank
So-
you.
my understanding from the attorney is if we're gonna go into those areas, we should check with the applicant if there's any concerns with the restrictions that are there. So does anybody have any issue with the applicant coming back up and talking to
Open the
them?
public hearing, or how do we do
Do I
that?
have to reopen?
And can I just ask one question? On the shared parking agreement in that district, there's a 25% incentive. Does that count if there's a shared parking agreement, in the zoning code, it says shared parking incentive, parking requirements provided herein may be reduced by 25%.
So it doesn't apply here because they have more than enough parking to meet the requirement of the parking regulations that are set forth in the code. It's indicating, so if you had a potential development and you couldn't get to the right number of parking spaces, that shared parking would let you achieve it. Here, they're providing more than enough based on the requirement, the parking requirements set forth in the senior parking, for senior
We
parking.
don't know what their current agreement is with the,
No, they don't need it, but on their parcel alone, they have more than enough, parking spaces to match what's required. If they have more than one space per every, senior.
0.75, I think, right?
Yeah, so if, in other words, with 66 units, they have to have less than, they don't even need 166 spaces. And they have, almost 300. So they don't need the relief, the 25% relief that's offered in the code.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go back to, I need to open up the public hearing.
Well, let me just clarify what I said earlier. If they're providing sufficient parking, I don't think that you can go and make them require them to provide more. So I may have misunderstood your question previously.
We're talking about a design element to the existing parking.
Okay.
That may impact the number of parking lots or parking, we don't think so.
They have more than enough parking. I think what we're talking about is they have a side agreement with the owner
Right.
that may be interfered with if we're imposing some other condition.
That's what I was trying to get at.
So he has a legal contract that we may be interfering with.
So if we require him to put trees in these other spaces and landscaping, is that gonna violate their current agreement? We don't know. if
Excuse
he's-
me, Bernie, I'm so sorry, Chairman, you really do need to know we're gonna get yelled at from the folks downstairs if you're not talking into the microphone.
You want this one, Bernie?
I'd like to open up the public hearing to let the applicant come up and speak to that.
Absolutely. I think when it comes to us including some new landscaping or enhanced landscaping within the green spaces that are already available, I think that's something that between us and the seller that we could, if there was a condition that we put new trees in there, replace the old trees, I'm sure that's something that we could come to a consensus pretty easily and live with that condition. But in reviewing the areas that aren't landscaped now and are just striped, just from putting a scale on them, it appears that when the mall was originally built, that any of the leftover areas at the end of the drive aisles that were big enough to support shade trees were actually curbed and landscaped, whereas the smaller ones, notably right down here along Medley Center Parkway, where they're under 7 feet, it looks like, those were excluded. And I think that was for a reason, which is I think they're getting pretty thin. So, from that sense, in terms of the REA, our agreement essentially says we have no control over that area. So that would be, if that were a condition, that would be a conversation for us to then have with the seller that says, hey, they, conditioned our project on something happening down here, which is, in your world, for lack of a better term, and have to go that way, which, is very easy if it's just improving the green spaces and the islands that are there now, but obviously gets challenging when you start introducing more cost. That would be our perspective.
I see typical tree pits in any city application, and they're, I don't know, 3-4 foot by 4 foot. These are, I don't know. I think that you could fit a tree in there if you wanted to.
And where is the easement on your property? Because it's not marked on this map,
It covers the entire property.
including the new building,
Yes.
is an easement?
Well, it's a reciprocal easement agreement, so it's not like a formal easement that follows a sewer line. It's an agreement that gives rights to areas outside of building envelopes and et cetera. So it's all done through language, because it'd be near impossible to draw lines on everywhere that it covers.
So where you moved the building north and took away some of that parking, Is that a violation then?
No, because we gained it on this side.
You gained it on which side? Where it's,
South, so we moved it north, and where we offset the parking to the north, we picked it up on the south where the
so
building used
what
to
I'm
be.
seeing is number 7 and number 10 actually equals the exact number that you took?
Well, we had to do some other on-site, add one here, move one there to make the numbers all work out, but at the end of the day, yes, we got the number we needed.
You're representing to me the exact same number of spaces were put back in by moving.
Or kept. And actually, we did pick up some spaces with the revision, which allowed us to move those units to a lower level and not have as much parking required under the building.
So you actually added spaces.
Correct.
So we could take these other spaces then.
No, you can't
What you
do
just
that,
said is,
yeah.
you just added spaces, but you took those spaces away by adding apartments on the lower level.
Yes.
Is what you, right, correct?
Yes. The whole parking discussion with the REA is extremely complicated and frustrating from our side as well.
I don't think that we need to talk about removing any parking spaces. I think that just using the space that's hashed out would be sufficient.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think there's enough space to do it. And again, I'm,
I agree too.
I mean,
Just for staff's record keeping, so we can make sure we're following along, you're referring to the hatched areas on the east side, sort of running
south
along.
of the building, there's 6.
Yeah, 1,
East
2,
side,
3,
south of the
4,
building.
5, 6 along the Medley Center Parkway.
Correct,
Those are the ones that that you're talking about, correct?
correct.
All right, just wanted to make sure that we're reflecting.
and I
Proper.
worry if we don't address it now, that we may not ever have the
we
opportunity
won't.
to
I
address it
100%
in the
agree with that
future.
statement.
Because while we hear that something may be coming, if it never comes, it never comes.
I agree.
There's not a code requirement in the new, this is just my question, the new district that was established. Because sometimes in some zoning codes you'll come across says that every end cap of more than X spaces needs a landscape island, but I didn't pick that up in the.
So
current
the way the code language reads in this is that only when there's a major modification, and in this case, the parking that's south of the building was essentially being presented as, we're not doing anything, we're not changing it. And so if you're just doing, you'd have the ability to make the alteration as the planning board's describing, and there wouldn't be a per count requirement. And this planning board has the ability to make that recommendation and not have to meet a specific dimensional requirement.
So once these are landscaped, who has to take care of them?
It would be the property owner, just as he would with all the other pieces of landscaping that.
It's kind of like being in a homeowners association. If you have 10 houses, all the houses enter an HOA, and the HOA pays for the maintenance for the properties.
And you can add more according to your agreement without an issue?
More,
Well, you can take these hash spaces and make them green space.
no, I mean, of course, the other members in the RA aren't going to want to necessarily do that because it increased costs, maintenance costs, but wanting to encounter two different things.
But currently you aren't, you the only member?
No,
Who else would be in that,
the other properties within the Skyview.
the other properties?
We represent Pastone,
Okay.
who doesn't own anything right now. They have an agreement.
No, but they would be the only tenant, right, at the moment?
No.
Well, there's still, even though there's no tenants, there's,
Well, because the other building is separately owned.
How'd we get here from London Plane Trees?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, Bernie, I think we should probably poll to see where people are at on this.
Let's finish the open public hearing moment, right? Should
Yeah.
we finish that up and see if anybody else has comment?
There's no more questions for the applicant at this point?
I don't have any.
Okay. I'm still a little muddy as to Kenny or Candy, but, you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody from the audience care to come up and speak? Close the public hearing. So what are you proposing?
I'm proposing that I guess asking the question to the board, that we consider the 6 hatched areas on the east side of the building, south of the proposed 5-story building, be converted to landscaped islands, rather than just striped pavement. Because I think it's consistent with what this applicant, which I applaud, is developing along the road, which is landscaped islands and landscaped green areas. And I think that that would solidify that, and then it also helps in the future if there's a time when there's further development, that now we've kind of, come up with our take on what we're trying to do here. And I think that is completely appropriate to screen this building a little bit in the parking.
You need to help me. Is that off his property?
No.
No.
No, he's.
Excuse me, micro. Can I ask you to pull the microphone down so that,
Yes.
thank you.
So, I think that's a wise idea. It's not a reduction of parking. It's a relatively small improvement. And aside from that, there's no improvements planned for that entire portion of the property. And I don't want to wait for something that may never happen with a whole-scale parking whatever. If we can do it now, we should do it now. I don't think it's a onerous thing to ask.
I don't think based on the project it's onerous.
Yeah, and when other applicants come to us and perhaps the continues to be piecemeal, we can point to this as an example of how to do it.
How it was done right.
Yeah.
So I like the idea myself, but if I could have the attorney explain how this works, because he said he had an easement on everything. This is within what he said he has purview over, as I understand it.
It's within his property lines
Right.
that we're discussing.
Let me take another shot at it, and given I haven't read any of these easements, but what the applicant has represented is that they're limited in what they have the right to build, so that his easements may limit him to just what you're seeing there on the plans. So what I said earlier was that you're not restricted based on the easements and what you can improve, but the reality is that the applicant may also be restricted in what the applicant can do. So if you approve something that they're not authorized to do by easement, your approval doesn't give them the right to do that. They may be prevented from building what you've approved, so that
What happens then?
they wouldn't be able to move forward with the project, I would think.
So
They would need to come back to the board.
Which could hold up their
hang on.
funding.
Then how are we supposed to know that they're okay to do any of this? Because why would that conversation be any different about the fact that they moved the building and changed that?
It's based on what they've represented to us here tonight. So again,
Which is change, is my point. So how do we know that that change isn't in violation of the REA?
we don't.
We
And
don't,
they
but we
just
don't
said
think
it
they
was a
would bring
parking-
it unless
it's
they
a
knew.
parking space
Hold
thing.
on. I don't think he would have brought the application before us unless he checked that.
I know, I guess my point is though,
But
if
he
we
didn't-
don't
he
have
didn't
the
know to
information
check
on
this.
the easement, how can we?
And I'm only concerned that if we're gonna push that, then it jeopardizes this whole thing starting by the spring.
Hey, Dan?
Yes.
If we make it a condition, are we able to include in the language, as long as it meets the allowances under the REA?
Might I suggest you can make the motion however you want with whatever conditions, and if for some reason the applicant can't reach agreement with the seller, that they would need to come back to this board to make an alteration, to present an alternate plan, or the rationale for why they're asking for a revised site plan. So that
Be
approved,
reviewed by staff.
well, and.
I have a
or
hard
them-
time putting the whole thing on the hook of 6 trees. I love the idea. I think it's great. I think
I don't think the whole plan is on the hook for 6
okay.
trees.
I mean,
I just really do not.
okay.
But
No,
I
that's
don't
great.
wanna-
No, and that's and I just I don't like speculation is all. That's
Yeah, and that was what I would say, is that since we don't know what the terms of that agreement are, that might be a little difficult for you to condition it and
Okay.
say,
yeah. And just looking for best
So there
of
is
both
a way
worlds.
to condition it that wouldn't hold up this, that's what I'm trying to say. No? They still have to come back.
well, I mean, you do have two options, right? You could say if they want to make any changes, if they can't meet the conditions, they have to come back. On the other hand, you could also say that that the conditions have to conform with the terms of these reciprocal easement agreements. The problem with doing that is we don't know what's in those reciprocal easement agreements, so.
Exactly, I don't like that because I've read some of those agreements and there could be other things in here that technically they could get out of then.
Yeah.
So I don't,
Could they come back before staff then, instead of the whole board?
For what?
For, what do you call those, like, site construction decisions, like they can or can't do something?
You mean for the, for the landscaping? Well, you can just, it would be if, at the permit or the construction or the permit application phase, if an alteration was required. We would typically call that a field change if it was needed, but that's, again, that's something that can happen when it's absolutely necessary based on planning board was approved for this, and then there's a reason at the construction phase where it's gotta change, depending on the severity of that. Determine whether they have to come back to the planning board or not.
so Mr. Chairman, if we're gonna entertain that idea, I would like it, if we're gonna entertain that, I would like it to say that it's staff and the planning board chairman then. Cause I think somebody from the board still needs to understand what's going on.
And typically, that's something, that's
Okay.
a protocol that staff utilizes,
Okay, alright, I didn't know, okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I don't know how the board feels about it, so I just wanna, Bradley, I think you declared. Mary? Which way? With trees?
Planning board.
Oh, bringing it back to the planning board or letting staff do it?
Oh, staff, of course.
Staff?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm with
But you
staff.
do like the idea of putting the trees there too?
I like the idea, but I'm with staff.
I like the ideas, I'm with staff too. Alan?
If they come back, to staff, I mean, they have to show that there is a reason they can't do it. I mean, it can't just be their word at the moment.
Duly noted.
All right.
Trust me, I have this tape to go back to.
I'm okay with staff.
I'm fine with staff.
Okay. Anything else? I think I now understand.
The applicant indicated that he would, or they would put, I think a concrete pad between the so it would be the northeast corner of the former Sears property to the new building, and then underneath the pedestrian bridge where the pedestrian connection should be. So whether they want to do that, or seems like that's what they want to do, so that's fine.
Well, he nodded to, he agreed to it when.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Talked
so
about it.
if you wanna give it to me as a condition, tell me how you would word it.
To connect the pedestrian access points on the northeast corner of the former Sears property to the new building,
It's a little slower, to connect the northeast.
to connect the pedestrian access points on the northeast corner of the former Sears building and to the new building, and beneath the pedestrian bridge with a concrete pad. And Spencer, did you have one about a sidewalk from the
I already
gazebo?
caught that, yeah. Sidewalk from the gazebo to the parking lot.
Yep.
That's not a grade problem?
No.
Okay,
Please direct your questions to the
Sorry.
board, please.
just wanted to make sure.
I was about to flip and look at the grading, but,
Hold on one second.
Yep.
To the new building and beneath the pedestrian bridge, you said a concrete pad. I thought you also said stamped.
If they want to, but it sounds like they want to do concrete, so that's fine. But if you want to leave it open for them to decide later, then
Stamped asphalt, I think is what you said, right?
stamped and dyed asphalt, if that's what they want.
We have to get into the color?
No.
Okay. So I had the sidewalk from the gazebo to the parking lot. Anything else?
I'd like to just add that any, pole light fixtures facing the residential have back and or side shields facing the residential.
Could you read the condition that you wrote for the,
Hold on. Any pole lights facing residential have what?
Can you read that back? Sorry.
Any pole lights facing the residential housing?
Maybe adjacent to the residential, maybe facing is the wrong word.
Residential housing.
To have back and or side shields. As appropriate. Back and or side shields. I didn't say my slash in there, or my,
I think Bradley got in before you. Alan, go ahead.
could you just read the condition that you wrote for the landscape islands?
For which?
The 6 landscaped islands.
I haven't
which-
gotten there yet,
Oh,
so I'll gladly take one from you, Bradley.
That'll be easier to read right now.
Yeah, so I'll gladly write what we would like to say.
way to
gee.
go. You want me to try to take it?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Spence.
All right, that the 6 existing hatched areas along the east property line, south of the proposed 5-story building, be converted to curbed and landscaped islands and then I guess I would say maybe a period and say in the event that the applicant has a conflict prohibiting this in the REA, condition to be reviewed by staff and the planning board chair.
Do you want to add inclusive of 1 native species shade tree?
Yeah, I can defer to you two. You guys are my landscaping guys.
Well, I think it should be.
Consistent.
I think it should be the continuation of the London plane. Yeah, I was trying to leave some flexibility in there.
That would be the preference.
I'm good with that.
What do you want added? I'm sorry.
Inclusive of 1 London plane tree. PLANE.
Anything else?
Can we just say, building materials to be, before you write this, Brian, let's just discuss this. Building materials to be, as physical samples were submitted tonight. There's just been written documentation in one of the letters or something about similar to Starbucks, and I wanna make sure it's not a natural wood. I want it to be a composite material.
Right.
To prevent fading and,
Do you want to just call that out specific instead of?
sure, that's fine. Wood look material to be composite.
I think there's a description right on the material. The sample he's.
There probably was, yeah.
Include that in the dialogue.
I just don't want it to be, I'm pretty sure Starbucks has an actual wood on it, and it's fading pretty bad.
Now's the time. Anything else? Looking once, twice. Someone like to please give me a motion. Any other questions? Staff?
You gotta do seeker.
Yeah. I'm just gonna ask for a motion for seeker. Bradley, can you give me?
Yeah, you want me to give a secret motion?
Yes, please.
Upon the matter of request by Pastro Associates acting as agent for Pastone for preliminary and final site plan approval to redevelop the existing Sears building at Skyview to include plus or minus 72 senior units and construct an additional 5-story building to include 96 units on premises 200 Medley Center Parkway in a Ridge Road Plan Development District. I would like to make a motion for seeker that it is an unlisted action and that we make a negative declaration.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No abstains? No abstentions. Okay. If you like, I'll read the motion since I have written down everything. For a second.
Please.
So upon the matter of request by Passero Associates acting as agent for Pastone for preliminary and final site plan approval to redevelop the existing Sears building at Skyview to include plus or minus 72 senior units and construct an additional 5-story building to include 96 units on premises 200 Medley Center Parkway in a Ridge Road Plan Development District, to include the additional conditions / findings. There will be a sidewalk from the gazebo to the parking lot, to connect the pedestrian access points of former Sears building to the new building, and beneath the pedestrian bridge, a concrete pad or stamped and dyed asphalt. Next one is any pole lights adjacent to residential housing to have back or side shields as appropriate. The next one, that 6 existing hatched areas along the east property line south of the proposed 5-story building be converted to curb and landscaped islands. In the event the applicant has conflict prohibiting in the REA, conditioned to be reviewed by the staff and planning board chair. And it's inclusive of one, I want to make sure I say this right, London plane tree. And 5, the wood look material to be composite. Sorry. The wood look material to be composite. Any others? Do I have a second?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, excuse me, I'm sorry. Adding a sidewalk from the gazebo to the parking lot, did you cover that?
That was the first one, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, no abstain, no absent. Thank you very much and best luck with this project. Thank you so much. Have a good day. It's exciting, something happening. Oh, we did seeker.
Recess so I can go refill my water.
Just gonna say.
Sure, we're gonna take a 5-minute break.
Perfect.
Thank you. These guys though, you know.
Ready.
Figured that.
Ooh.
Okay, ready? Thank you. Next case on the agenda, case number PB 1809-3. Upon the matter of request by Christian Jur R.A., acting as agent for Shajan Baby for revised site plan approval associated with the change of use to operate a public automotive repair shop on premises 1661 Hudson Avenue in a C Business District.
Good evening. My name is Chris Dewar. I'm here representing Sage Baby, who is the proposed buyer for 1661 Hudson Avenue. The history of this property
was one of originally being Harry and Gordy's Auto Service Center. About two and a half years ago, they came before this board for a special use permit to change this from a repair shop to a auto sales shop. And now what we're doing is trying to go back to that old use. The last approval had 50 parking spots in total. This approval has 50 parking spots in total. We're not proposing any site changes or building changes, but we're proposing a different allocation to what type of cars can park there. We're proposing 2 handicap spots, 14 customer spots, 6 employee spots, 11 public repair spots, 17 display parking spots for a total of 50 parking spots. As a result of our workshop, you guys had requested that we just label the plans and show snow storage locations to the rear and to the north side of the property. We're to add a note to the plans, no active repair vehicles parked in front of the building. Add a note, customer parking is considered vehicles dropped off for service at night, vehicles which the repair has been completed, and customers for used vehicle sales. Add note, signage behind the glass at the front elevation to be limited to 20% of the glass area. We're adding a note that the hours of operation to be Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And another final note that striping is not required. Display vehicles along Hudson can be parked at angles or perpendicular to the street at the owner or leasee's desire. I also took current photos of the site for your review and comment.
Oh, no problem.
There was a concern at the last meeting for the shape of the dumpster, and I guess we can ask you guys to comment on that.
So I have before, you want us to do the dumpster first, or you don't care which way we go?
You can start wherever you'd like.
You said that you were gonna add notes, so
Yeah.
did you do that? Give us something that shows that, or?
No, but I'll submit, I think they're all just basic in nature, I'll submit those, but I was waiting for additional comments, looking at the site photos.
That's what I was asking, do we have to capture those?
Excuse me,
conditions?
Chairman, would you mind using your microphone, please? Thank you. It's the small object that's right in front, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was really inappropriate. I
And I
apologize.
did
That was not
compliment you
very.
tonight, I want you to
No,
know that.
I'm sorry. Getting a little punchy after, I apologize.
After 10 o'clock, we all turn into pumpkins.
So what, generally speaking, when the applicant makes testimony or provides testimony, what the finalized site plan that they'll present to the town for signature would reflect the notes that they're referencing in the testimony. So you can accept or acknowledge those, the provided, information or updates that would be made. And then staff would make sure that it gets reflected in the final, that it gets signed.
Thank you.
Is there a closure on this dumpster?
I can tell you, I was over on the site, I'll just answer for the applicant. There was a closure on it, but it was in disrepair as well as the enclosure altogether. But the opening, I wouldn't want to be monkeying with it.
That's what I was getting at.
It would appear from the photo that the, one of the gates is missing and one is half there.
I do have a few questions for the applicant.
No.
Is there a lighting plan on here at all? Or what are you guys doing with this? I know there's two, like, mercury vapor lights on top of the building that face onto Hudson. Are you guys gonna continue to use those, or?
We hadn't proposed any changes to those. No.
Okay, you have residential property right next to you on the north side of that?
Yes, correct.
The fence, not only there, but in other parts is in disrepair. I would like to see that taken care of. And also, it would be great if that could be extended, so it's covering the residential portion that would separate your business from their business.
So you're at the north property line, is what
Yeah.
you're saying?
You know what I'm, there, it's residential right there.
Correct. Multifamily, yes, right.
The dumpster area, I think we'll discuss as a full board, probably what recommendation we'd like to make. There's tires stored on there, is there going to be some, provision to get those tires out of there?
Oh, it's part of the sale, they have to be gone.
Okay, and for you also, you'll have a contract on those, I'd assume?
Yes.
Okay. Right now, there's double parking in that back area. Is that what you guys intend on doing?
No, it's not what we've proposed on this plan.
Okay. And then I noticed that if I were to park a car on the Hudson facing east toward Hudson, there's nothing to stop a car from going across that sidewalk.
Correct.
So there's no
No curb
curbing
stops
there.
or anything like
Yeah.
that, no.
So I'd be more fearful if it were customers in there, to be honest with you, not judging properly, and there's nothing to stop them from going clear across Hudson.
You're talking about these 9 display spots, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not, I mean, they're display cars, not customer cars.
Right.
Okay, just,
But we're gonna assume that there are always gonna be display cars there to not block a customer from parking where they would like. That was some of the observations I made while I was there. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. I also think that on one of the drawings here, you guys are showing parking where there's actually an overhead garage door. If I look at, it's probably 2 of 4.
is it the, where we show the handicap parking spaces in the,
Yeah,
place? Yeah, that's correct. Those aren't service bays, those are just bays for, to bring in a display car.
so there's gonna be parking, but also it will be somewhat of an active overhead door? Or,
It's an active overhead door for the purposes of bringing in a car for a display. You know, so they have to wait for, you know, vehicles to be out that way to bring a car in.
It is employee parking, so presumably
Right.
if they needed to move a car out,
Okay.
they wanted to sell one.
I just noticed it and you answered my question.
Okay,
I mean, it
yep.
looked like it was being used for a dual purpose. and
Dual
it is,
purpose
and
is
there's an
correct, yes,
explanation.
yep.
Good.
Yep.
I just have a question for staff. I don't remember the answer. I think there was some discussion at the workshop about the interior parking spaces, or not really parking spaces, but what they're labeled on here is public repair, like service bays, if you will, that those counted towards parking. I thought I'm remembering this at our workshop.
We talked about this, I think, not for this application, but I think for the prior, where the prior owner of the used car sales counted that toward, you know, sort of being able to store vehicles while they were being worked on. so that they were maximizing
So
their.
from a code standpoint though, is that, do you know?
Yeah,
is that-
there's really no requirement that they
Okay,
be
well, I just wanna
count,
make sure, cause 50 is on the surface of this drawing.
right.
So if we had to include those, then
Well,
he's
then-
beyond 50, and I just don't wanna make a problem for the applicant.
So I think that if in looking at, as you're deliberating or coming to a decision, you would specify the 50 would be surface lot outside of the building. And then anything that happens inside the building is really
Fair enough.
beyond, if that's not a concern, then it's not anything that you need to address.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Where do you currently, or where is used oil currently stored? Is used oil currently stored on site?
I would have to look at photos that I have of the building. I'm not sure
Okay,
what they're doing with the oil.
okay. The only thing I want to maybe specify is that we don't store used oil in the dumpster enclosure.
That would be a problem, and I think that I have to meet New York State regulations with respect to how and where the oil is stored. And our fire marshal and/or building inspector would be ensuring and code enforcement if there was a problem with how and where it was being stored.
With DEC regulations, I believe you could store it on secondary containment pallets in the dumpster enclosure.
And you'd prefer that not
I
be
would
the case?
prefer that not happen.
Okay.
So interior storage.
Interior storage
Okay.
of used oil.
I have a question about the striping. It wouldn't be your preference to stripe this, is that correct, or what are your thoughts on striping,
In terms of
the parking?
striping the whole thing, or?
Yeah, I'm just looking for what you think.
I don't really know what my client's preference would be. You know, it's not a big ticket item, so, you know, I wouldn't choose to stripe the display parking out front. And I might not even choose to stripe the display parking along the north property line. It certainly would be logical and helpful to probably to stripe the customer parking out front and the handicap.
The handicap probably, right?
Well, the handicap
Has to be
spacing
striped.
has to be striped. Based on the size of the lot, they're actually exceeding the requirement. I believe it's 1 per 50, and my design professional on the board is acknowledging, so they're actually exceeding the minimum requirement. But that would absolutely, at least one would have to be correctly.
Two. It's got two handicaps.
He does, they show two. Technically and legally, they would at least have to stripe out and paint out appropriately the one.
I'm thinking especially with these extra customers, I don't see how customers would figure out how to park there correctly without striping. Because it overhangs the edge of the building, and there's these kind of, it's not intuitive.
Right.
Yeah, you'd have to look for it.
Anything else? Gary, would you like to go over the seeker?
I'd be
I'm
ha-
sorry, is there any other questions? I'm sorry?
Public hearing?
Oh, yeah.
Public hearing, yeah.
Sorry.
Somebody's here for it.
That, I'll let you take a seat, we'll open it up for public hearing. Anybody who'd like to address the board regarding this matter, please come to the podium.
Maybe not.
Do these count as the parking?
Seeing none, close the public hearing. Now, would you like to please talk about seeker?
I'd be happy to. You'll see before you have a sample of part 2 and part 3 for this project. It's an unlisted action under seeker. Given the fact that there are no physical alterations besides potential, painting of stripes for demarcation of parking spaces, the site continues to be used in either car repair or used car. In this case, it's a combination thereof of previous uses that have been approved on the site. So therefore, because there's very limited change in use or intensity of use and no physical changes being proposed that are significant, the recommendation is for a negative declaration for the purposes of seeker.
Thank you. Board have any other comments? Okay. Would somebody like to make a seeker?
Pertaining to case PB 1809-3, upon the matter of request by Christian Dewar, RA, acting as agent for Shajan Baby, for revised site plan approval associated with a change of use to operate a public automotive repair shop on premises 1661 Hudson Avenue in a C business district. I suggest we declare this unlisted action with a negative declaration.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No nays, no absent, no abstain. Okay. Somebody like to make a motion? I did capture some conditions. Will we say those now? I'll make the motion. Okay, upon the matter of request by Christian Dor, R.A., acting as agent for Sage Babby, for revised site plan approval associated with a change of use to operate a public automotive repair shop on premises 1661 Hudson Avenue in a C business district, case number PB 1809-3, 1661 Hudson Avenue. I captured the following conditions. All the points that were stated by the agent at the beginning of the meeting be verified by the staff. Can that be a condition? He went through all the things we talked about at the meeting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. 50 cars represent the surface parking outside the building. Interior stored used oil. And customer parking will be striped.
Do you think we should stripe the public repair as well in the back? An employee? I mean, what about everything besides display?
That's a good idea. There's nothing to stop somebody from going up against that building at this moment, except that a visual would probably help them.
Okay, parking lot to be striped except display.
Yeah.
Parking. Did I miss any?
Yeah. We need to take care of that dumpster.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That dumpster should be brought up to code. I don't know what that would require. If you ask me, I would say it needs to be cinder block enclosed, just like we normally would do with all the rest of the dumpsters in that area.
Are you proposing dumpster to be brought up to code? Or are you proposing masonry?
Not code. Just for clarification, this board certainly has a purview during site plan review. However, generally the process for dumpster enclosure is submission is made to the Director of Community Development for review per the code for solid waste. If this board wants to specify what that is, you certainly can, or you can leave it to the purview of the Director of Community Development.
I think that since this is not a major redevelopment of that property, that to ask them to bring it up to the cinder blocks would be way too much. And I think that they should just bring it up. We just ask that it be brought up to code, and whether or not that's something that we would condition, right? Because it's just a code. Is it just a
You
code
could have
enforcement thing?
findings, right? How would you do it as a finding?
Yeah, I think we should still mention it, though.
Okay.
I think we should specifically mention that it needs to be brought up to code.
To code, whatever the process is for that.
Yeah,
so
I
be it.
agree. I think the applicant has answered all the things we did in the workshop. We've added some,
Yeah.
especially the striping, so
Yeah, I'm
I'm okay. I would like
Good with
the
that.
masonry too, but I think,
yeah,
I think brought up to code is good.
Only because it's not a big redevelop. Like typically we would
yeah,
ask for it to be.
it's not visible from anywhere. The entire property line is fenced, so I think all those things make it reasonable to.
And I don't want to make anything hard, but that fence is in disrepair and needs some attention. There needs to be a greater separation between the residential portion of this and the vehicle repair portion of this.
So I don't wanna say greater separation. What would you like it to say?
I would put a fence there if it were up to me. I mean, not specifying the fence.
So,
Where exactly are we talking about? I'm
On the north side of his project,
Yep.
up to the parking line. It doesn't have to go clear up to the street, and obviously it couldn't. But that's a residential property there.
So where is their fence today? Do we?
It goes about a third of the way up through that parking lot,
From the west to
Alan.
the east?
from the west and to the east.
I live next to a commercial property. You can't go all the way to the street.
No, I'm
Or
not
the
asking for
sidewalk.
that. I think to the end of their driveway, their parking area
No,
would
you
be,
can't go that far.
yeah. Yeah, to match their parking area, there's probably still 40 more feet, maybe even 50 feet to the street.
You mean,
Let's just say it's from mine.
so you can have a 6-foot fence up into the rear property line of the building, right? Then after that, it has to be 4.
Actually, commercial fencing, that's the residential, code, but you are correct about if that was residential, you'd be spot on.
So, do you want to have a 6-foot fence up to the front facade of the building?
Yeah. I think that would be,
Okay.
because
What
that
do you
would
want
cover,
that to be made? What is it? It's board on board, or what is it?
Yeah, I think the existing
the
appears to be
existing is board on
so-
board.
So just for consistency
Yep.
purpose,
Yep.
we should specify, otherwise it might be chain link or something like that.
Yep.
Well, that wouldn't make any sense.
Well, that's why, yeah.
I would die if they did that to me.
They fill a Venetian blind thing.
So it's board-on-board fence to be added?
Yes.
To what side?
To
The north property line,
Terminating at the front corner of the building.
yep. And I did not visit the site at night, but the lighting there, if they're currently just using those mercury vapor lights on top of the building facing down, that's certainly not anything that we're looking to continue.
Is that what's there now?
That's what's there now, on top of the building. They're just two big rectangular units that face down. I don't know that we have anything that shows those.
Yeah,
Is this what you're talking about?
building front looking south to north.
Yep.
The sheet he just gave us.
So it's like a typical parking lot fixture.
Yeah.
It's certainly not what we would put in new.
There's also two sitting on top of the building, though, that you're not seeing. I mean, I don't know if anybody's been at the site, but, yep.
I don't see an issue with the lights, but what are
Yeah,
you trying to ask for?
Pardon?
Are you asking for another condition?
I'm asking for us to take a look at the lights. If I'm not getting anywhere, I'm not gonna spend
I
a
think
whole
during
lot
the
of time.
deliberations, it didn't come up. I mean,
I don't have any major issue with
I
it.
don't have an issue with it.
I mean, I brought it up as a question when
Yeah,
I
okay.
asked the applicant questions
Yeah.
about it. Those are two big old mercury vapor lights. They don't fit the dark sky. But if this board doesn't want to continue with the dark sky part of the code, that's fine.
I don't have an issue with the lights. I'll ask the rest of the board.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to be careful about what we're asking because it's not a major site redevelopment. They're just trying to change the use.
I'd like to just
So-
maybe just use the same placement, but put another fixture that could be a little bit more focused. I'm sure that they make those.
Sure, I mean, the fixture is definitely available. I guess I'm toiling or I'm struggling with the same thing Brad just said, is that, you know, they're coming to us for a change of use. I understand it's our time, we're getting things addressed, dumpster, fence, et cetera.
I'll defer to the board. I'm okay with it. Michael?
I'm okay with the lights the way they are. Like,
Then we can move on.
Well, that's only Michael, Spence, myself.
I'm okay.
We'll move on. Okay.
I can count to 4.
Okay, so I gave 6 conditions to the motion. Do I have a second?
Second?
All All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Mr. Chair,
7-0, hold on one second. Anyone opposed, say nay. Abstain. Okay, yes,
are we gonna do the town referral on this issue now,
Yes.
or?
yes, we are. Hold on one second. So, we would like to change the agenda, and now we'd like to discuss the town board referral, since it involves the same property. Michelle, when you're ready.
This is an item for board action, a town board referral upon the matter of request by Chris Deere acting as Shajan Baby for a special use permit to operate an automotive repair shop with limited used car sales on premises, 1661 Hudson Avenue in a C Business District.
Does staff want to talk to this, or the applicant?
I can
Yeah.
provide a quick overview. So the change in use also triggers the need for the applicant to go through the town board for a revised or a new special use permit, because both uses proposed at this location, used auto sales and car repair are subject to special use permit in the C Business District. At last month's, or this month's meeting at town board, the application was accepted. It was referred to this board for comment or referral related to the use. And then the public hearing will be conducted at the October, regular town board meeting. So what this board needs to contemplate and provide, report back to the town board related to whether the fit, how well suited this parcel is for the proposed special use.
So the fact that it used to be a gas station?
The fact that it used to be a car repair place, and then it was a used car place right before this, and now we're coming back with Plan C, which is a combination of the two. I leave to you to the.
Was a combination.
So after we
was a
approve it, we
combination
send
before.
a negative?
I didn't know how to quite ask that.
Wow.
Okay, I'm not sure that we need much discussion, but we're here to discuss it. Is there anybody that would not see this as a positive referral? Please speak up. So I believe the board would like to do a positive referral. Can I have a motion, please? I'll make that motion. Can I have a second, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Upon the matter of request by Chris Storr, acting as agent for S. Babby for a special use permit to operate an automotive repair shop with limited used car sales on premises 1661 Hudson Avenue in a C Business District. Recommend a positive referral to the town board. No comments?
Second.
Based on the current usage, which would not vary differently than what
You
is
do want to
being
make
asked.
comments to the board? I'm sorry, I'll
I
write
think
it.
that we need to just expand upon it a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah,
Just-
past and present uses, right? I mean,
so tell me what you would like to say.
That this board recommends a positive referral to the town board based on the incremental change in the use and conditions of the property.
I accept those with my motion. Do I have a second? Did you second this?
and I still second it even with the comments.
Okay. If I was you, I would have said
And
no.
even from Alan.
That passes. Thank you. And please pass on, thank him for doing business in Arundecoit.
Hey, Dan, get out of here.
I have a conflict of interest, so I'm gonna step down.
What would that be? It's almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's his conflict of interest.
So-
It's 10 o'clock.
Conflict of interest is
Board members, while there's a changing of the guard, so to speak, with our serving deputy town attorney, Michelle is going to call what is on the agenda as 7 separate applications, 7 separate cases. She is going to call them each separately, but in one combined motion, so that the applicant's agent can represent or provide information about all 7 in one shot. And so then the public hearing can be conducted, and then the public hearing can be closed, and then this board can go about its business addressing each of the applications, but in the interest of time, and since all of the 7 microcells have a lot of similarities, this seems like the most expedient way to call the public hearing.
Thank you. Could you go through each page, please, as we go through this?
Next items on the agenda will be case number PB 1809-4, 1809-5, 1809-6, 1809-7, 1809-8, 1809-9, and 1809-10. Upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody, acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown Incorporated, doing business as Verizon Wireless for preliminary final site plan approval to co-locate a microcell wireless telecommunications facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right-of-way in front of 1862 Hudson Avenue, near 184 Thorndike Road, near 180 Wimbledon Road, on St. Paul Boulevard in the vicinity of 11 Daly Boulevard, in front of 2101 Seneca Avenue, in front of 2523 St. Paul Boulevard, and in front of 2924 St. Paul Boulevard, all located in an R1 residential district.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board.
Still evening. It's not quite morning yet.
Little known fact, Miss Ivers and I attended St. John Fisher College together in 1994 and graduated. It's almost been 25 years. I must say, I must have really done something to anger Carrie, because every time I come to these meetings, I'm dead last on the agenda. So I
That'll
just,
show you.
I'm not
Revenge
sure
is
what I-
slow served sometimes.
I know I've been before the planning board to discuss this when we made the referral back to the planning board. Does the board need me to, again, review the specifics of why we're here, or does the board recall why we're?
I think for the public, if you could just give a very high level.
Verizon Wireless is currently experiencing dramatic capacity constraints on its network in the Irondequoit area. 2 of its macro cell towers facilities, the one called our Hoover Road site behind the St. Paul Boulevard, and the Seneca Towers site, are both at maximum capacity. And so in order to provide additional capacity, and this is all set forth in tab F of the application, in order for us to get more bandwidth, more lanes on the highway for people to be able to use their their wireless telecommunications facilities in the Irondequoit area, Verizon has proposed 7 microcell wireless facilities, which are basically they're little antennas, relatively speaking, to our traditional macro facilities. They're about the size of a 5-gallon pail, about 2 feet tall, and they're proposed to be installed on 7 separate utility poles at the addresses that were just read out. And each of them contain the antenna, which stands just below, or will be installed just below the primary and secondary electric lines on the poles, and will be and there'll be a little equipment shroud that is installed approximately 10 to 10 and a half feet above ground to keep people from accessing to it, and then the typical utility wiring between the shroud itself and the antenna that serve it. I do know from speaking to Ms. Ivers over the last week or so from your workshop, you had a number of questions that I am prepared to respond to, so maybe I can present them once for you. Can the equipment be painted to match the pole color? The answer is yes. We recommend the antenna can be painted, another question was what color the utility pole is going to be. They're going to be traditional utility pole wood brown colored. So we can have the antenna and the shroud itself painted to blend, to match. I'm not sure we can get the exact same color based on each utility pole comes, but they're the traditional utility poles, and we'll paint them brown to match. Our engineers and equipment engineers are recommending that we don't paint the wiring and things that go between the shroud because that'll look worse than, especially as it moves or whatever, than to try to maintain it. So the wiring that you see on utility poles to date is with the color that it comes, and it's usually black or dark. And so he's recommending, based on experience, that would be hard to maintain over time. We'll probably order the antenna shrouds if we can, dark brown, and that'll save on the long-term maintenance and visibility and appearance of those facilities. The next question was, what color will they be? Standard utility pole brown, I guess, is the best way. And can the antennas be oriented on the pole opposite of traffic direction for the particular side of the road pole is on? So in other words, you've got your poles and you've got the wires going along the highway adjacent to the right-of-way. The question, I believe, is can we move the antennas on the side so that they would be essentially behind the pole as you drive up to it, and in order to see the antennas, you would have to look back. The answer is no on 5 of the 7, and the reason is when they're on the side of the pole, they'll be right in and amongst the utility lines, our wires, and so when our repair worker goes up to have to maybe tune the antenna or change it out, they'll be working within a foot of the electric lines. We don't want any inadvertent accidents, so they don't install these things that close on the utility lines. So they have it either on the back or the front towards the highway, because then they're 90 degrees from the lines and safety is secured in that. There are, however, two poles, what we call our Mary Hunt and Sylvia. The one at 1860, you may want to write this down for conditions if you're interested in this. The antenna at 1862 Hudson Avenue, as well as 2523 St. Paul Boulevard.
Across the street.
Do you have those? 1862 Hudson Avenue and 2523 St. Paul. Those two utility poles actually are guide, and there's no utility lines actually servicing them. So we can move those to the angle that you preferred. So those two, from an operational perspective, we can comply with the request that the antenna be on the backside as you drive towards the pole in the highway. As for the equipment cabinets themselves, all of them are already in a position that you requested on that far side of the pole as you're driving towards it, with the exception of one, and that is our project known as Landvale, and that is 2924 St. Paul Boulevard. That existing is proposed to be sort of towards the back, and the reason why it is there is there's an existing utility, I can't think of the word, conduit, that's already on that side of the pole that would prevent us from being on that side as you all requested, but that's the only one that would prevent it, so it's tilted a little bit towards the home. It's important to understand that the house, that won't be pointed towards the side of, or the front of a house. Just so happens that the lot that we are in front of, the house is oriented on a corner, and actually that cabinet, although it's not completely pointed at their house, it's sort of moved away from that 45 with the road, but it's pointed, on the side of their house, so it's not pointing at the front of their house. Just for clarification, it's over 100 and some feet from that pole to their home. And again, the shroud is about 2 feet by 3 feet in size, and very similar to other installations on utility poles. So does anybody have any questions on those I believe those were the questions that the planning board raised at the workshop meeting.
I just have a couple questions, if I can, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
On 2523 St. Paul, which I know that you're aware of, is that an easement or a right-of-way that that pole is on?
I can't speak to that.
It's on the west side of St. Paul. It's
I
Cross
understand
Street.
that, but it seems to me it's on the people's property, that it's not on the street.
Again,
There's a light pole in front of that on the street, and then back behind, basically in their bushes, is that utility pole.
I guess, I
He's right.
I can't speak to that per se. I know that it's RG&E's pole, so RG&E has the right to be there and to allow things to attach to it.
I don't know that it makes any difference to us. I just asked if it was an easement or a right-of-way that we were.
I just don't,
Here.
all I have is the specific permission
Or is it
from
all
the
the
RG.
same?
So looking at the site plan in that application, it appears that that pole is approximately 3 feet behind the sidewalk, you know, behind being away from the curb of the road. But it doesn't explicitly show where the property line is on the blow-up. The overall site plan does make it appear that it is in the right-of-way,
That's the photo, that's the best.
where the property line is in the photo, yeah.
Hey, Carrie,
Yes.
what is the distance of the right-of-way from the center line of St. Paul Boulevard? Because that is a county road, correct?
It is a county road, and I can tell you that generally speaking, and I don't know the center line, I'd have to double check. I'm just looking at some pictometry imagery, which does overlay, boundary line. It is an approximation, and it looks as though it very well could be located in the right of way. What I would suggest though is from a site plan perspective, the applicant is coming forth with permission from RG&E.
Right.
And so this is like any other utility located on a utility pole. So if they have permission to be there from RG&E, and RG&E is allowed to be there, this
Yeah,
board.
I don't have any question about, I just wanted to make sure we were doing the right thing for them.
Right, in this instance, I think that, it doesn't change this board's purview.
Okay. Then the, box at 180 Wimbledon, can that be moved to the pole next to it? Only because there's a fire hydrant right next to this pole.
I don't know.
Okay.
Is-
Hey, there's a pole, I believe that would be north, I can't remember.
Our genie has restrictions on where they will allow us
Okay.
to be. If there's an existing as I think I said it, maybe I didn't say this the last time I was here. I know I said it at other boards here, that if there are other things on the pole, like a transformer, they won't allow, because of weight constraints, they won't allow us to be here. So these were carefully chosen to comply with our genie's
Yeah, there was nothing on this other pole, I just wondered, because it's a fire hydrant right next to this pole.
What's your thought or concern with the fire hydrant?
I don't know, I just thought that that's a lot of stuff and there's nothing on that pole just to the north of it. It was just a question, if you can't do it, you can't do it, I'm asking.
I don't know if it's a physical impossibility. I know that they chose the sites based on our genies allowing them to be on those poles.
So is it a visual thing, Alan? Is that-
Yeah, I mean, it would be, it's right there on the corner, the one up to it is not visual at all. But,
Again, the cabinets are about 10 feet off the ground, so it won't interfere at all with the fire hydrant that's there. And again, the modest size, I can't tell you whether we're physically able to move it to the next one, I know, but it was carefully chosen based on the plan.
okay, that's all I had. And I appreciate the fact that you've, moved them so they are facing, the one that's on Hudson Avenue wouldn't really matter, cause that's in a commercial property. I mean, it could face the back of that and nobody would,
I just want to tell you which ones were physically able to move.
yeah, I mean, if
as
they're
you
all going the
suggested.
same way, it's easier for your guys to know what's going on.
So Alan, the one that you're concerned about, there is a picture that shows that clearly, if anybody wants to look at it in the package.
Yep.
It's, like the fourth sheet from the back.
Which site is it again? Can you?
It is 180 Wimbledon Road.
Which I truly believe is actually on Clinton, but that's, you, I mean, in that nearness is where we're at here, so we can identify this.
To Alan's point, it is a cluttered corner.
Yeah. That's why I'm just thinking something else is being added to it, and there's a pole probably, 25 feet north of that on
One of the,
Clinton.
as I look at this, one of the reasons why they often place them here versus, shall we say, the next one, is that the tree that's in front of that could block the coverage from that. So in a perfect world, they would look and say, let's put it here. There isn't the foliage that's right by those trees and could block it. I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of as we looked at it, and I can't see where that is. And that can get down the street as well, as opposed to being one, the coverage can be sent down Clinton and Wimbledon on the intersection that can send the signal down the street, as opposed to having it being up one pole.
Sure, yep.
And I think that may be the design. I can't speak for that, but I know the foliage, and they do try to get on corners if they can, because that antenna is omnidirectional. So we'll try to go up the street and down the
Yeah,
street.
I was asking because there's a lot going on there, and it would be a lot less visible if you moved it one. But if that's not possible, that's not possible. I'm not. One on Thorndike, though, you can put them all over the place.
So,
If it makes my cell service better, you can put them wherever you want. You can plant one in my front yard.
so could a condition be if there is a pole that's not as cluttered in the same area? Or do you have to redo the whole thing?
I mean, I'm an advocate, keep the clutter together. Why clutter up another one?
That's the point.
Well, personally, if you drove by it, you would see that it would be a lot less noticeable.
What does that do to you if we did?
I don't know whether we can, I honestly don't know whether RG&E will allow us to put it there, or what the RF design is. I know we would have to go through a whole other process with RG&E to get cleared on that and to come in and redesign it. But again, I can assume they chose the best pole for a variety of reasons.
I got it. I
I'm
know this is
fine
hard to
with-
believe. I really think Ellen has a point. So,
I do have one other question. What happens when you guys are no longer using these?
Your code requires us to remove them.
Okay. Cool.
Thanks, Carrie.
We have a very smart town board, don't we?
so now's the time to ask questions. Ellen, how much farther do you want to go with that one?
No, I'm done. Yeah, if they're telling me they can't,
They can't tonight, for sure.
yeah.
That's for certain. And again, they designed it the way they did to get.
Okay. Did you bring an engineer with you by chance, or?
Oh, when I brought Chris Boyce, like I said, I can ask, but I'm not sure he'll have the answer either. But again,
As you were talking, he was nodding his head very much in agreement, so.
Hold your comments until you get to the podium, please, if you don't mind.
It's this little black thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Just state your name and your
Chris Boyce.
address.
And 6615 Towpath Road, East Syracuse. When we start these, we get very specific search rings from our RF engineer. And when I go out there, I'll identify all the poles based on the RG&E guidelines that were given. Transformers, resistors, other things that we can't go on. So when we provide the 1 or 2 poles out of the 7 or 8 within the search ring, it's RF driven, and they'll pertain foliage and look at all the other variables, existing sites, new sites, and where they're going to go. And it's RF driven from there, based on what works best for them. So that's all. That's
And I
all
apologize. Your role is? I'm sorry.
I'm a site acquisition specialist, so I do like the real estate side of these things. So submit the applications to RG&E, the utility pole companies, and sit alongside these meetings. So.
And just, it should be noted for this board that the applications that are before you are with permission from RG&E for those specific locations. So any alteration by this board would require them to go back to RG&E to negotiate whether or not they could actually have permission or gain permission to relocate.
So Ellen, once again, now that you have all that information,
No, what was represented to me is more than acceptable. I just happened to be out there and saw it and thought I would ask the question if it was possible. And if it's good enough for RF, it's good enough for me.
Talk like you've been in Verizon meetings. That's what's RF want?
any other questions before we open up the public hearing? And for clarity, we're gonna open up the public hearing for all of them, and if anybody comes to the podium, to please address which site that they're talking about.
So anybody that's speaking for the public hearing can reference them in general or in collection, or if they have concerns or comments for a specific location, they can specify the location they're concerned or interested in.
Thank you for staying.
Want to point out, this might be one of the most patient residents of the town of Arundequoit.
I did a little while ago in front of the zoning board on the same issue, and we did get last on the agenda, you're right. My name is Susanna Porter, I live on Wicklow Drive, and I'm here, I got a chance to see what this looks like at the last meeting, which is good. I don't like it. If it was in front of my house, I wouldn't like it, but my cell phone service is good. But I'm here particularly about 2924 St. Paul Boulevard. It's on the corner of St. Paul and Titus. It's a big, not too long ago, sided. I think it's a light gray now. It happens to be on the market, and it's
On the market.
languishing, which is unusual. It's a beautiful home. But this individual house, nice big St. Paul house, makes it a pleasure to enter our town from the city. It already has 3 utility poles in front of it, one of those big painted electrical boxes, the big yellow crosswalk sign, the corner Titus and St. Paul, and a bus stop. And there's more stuff on the Titus Avenue side of the house, which it looks like the front of the house, but when you're living in the house, the front of the house is facing St. Paul. It's where the living room is. That's kind of just what I want to say. There's so much stuff in front of this beautiful house already, and to put, it seems like not too much equipment to you, but if it was in front of my house, I would be really upset because there's so much stuff there already. Just look very cluttered, detracts from our beautiful St. Paul Boulevard. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
I don't know if anybody looked, but there are 2 pictures that represent what she's talking to.
Oh, I saw it in person. I can tell you that there are 3 poles right there. 1 a light pole and 2 wooden utility poles. And a for sale sign pole.
Yes.
Open house, anybody interested this Sunday? No.
No, they're open.
Alan, are you in the market?
No, it's a beautiful house. It's an unfortunate thing.
Would the applicant like to address that?
The answer is, of the 3 poles that were in front of the house, this was the only one that was available to meet the RG&E standards because of the loading on the other 2 poles.
Makes sense.
And I did not ask if anybody else for the TV wanted to speak, because there's nobody else in the audience at this point in time. So, with that, unless there's more questions, I will close the public hearing. Okay. So, the best way to proceed is we have to do each one for seeker oh, you're gonna talk
Yes.
to seeker? I'm sorry.
You know what, so in looking at, doing the seeker analysis related to the site plan review, in addition to looking at the individual proposed site locations, it's important to contemplate for your benefit as you undertake each one, the potential cumulative impacts associated with all 7 at once. And so you'll see on the part 2 and part 3 for each of the applications, there's actually a brief overview or discussion of the potential, the examination of the potential cumulative impacts associated with all 7.
I
However,
can't find my part 2 and part 3. I apologize.
they were all emailed to you, and I apologize if, I am so sorry. The part 2s and part 3s were emailed, and I don't know that I apologize if they're not with you printed.
We have
Let
one
me-
copy we'll pass around while you're talking.
That would be wonderful. So via email, they were attached for your review, and the discussion, again, all 7 are fairly identical when you're looking at the individual impacts. And so now I want to talk about the cumulative, so that when you take up each one individually, you'll also be able to look at them, take the hard look in total. So even though when there are 7, they are spread out in a geographic way, so they're not concentrated or creating sort of a changing character. They are utility poles replacing what are currently utility poles. The addition of the equipment for the cellular transmission is relatively small and can be painted or treated in a way that's going to minimize their visibility or their potential for visual impact. And again, because they are located in the utility, in the right-of-way, on utility poles, and they're spread out enough, in looking at the whole potential for cumulative impacts, didn't think that anything rose to the level of being a moderate or large adverse impact requiring further analysis. For each of the individual sites, I can tell you that the analysis looked at each location, indicated that in places where the utility appurtenances could be situated to minimize visual views from the right-of-way or from passerbys, those efforts are being made by the applicant. In general, it's on a utility pole where utility poles now already in the right-of-way typically can have transformer boxes or other utility-related types of structures or facilities on them, and so this is very much in keeping with that. And because of that, each individual location, we didn't identify any larger significant impacts at any of the individual locations that would require further environmental analysis. And so, as you look through the Part 2 and Part 3 for each proposed location, we are recommending a negative declaration for each one.
Any questions?
Just on procedure, Mr. Chair, would you like us to examine seeker and then
the only
do a motion on the same project number at the same time?
I'm gonna refer to our legal advice here.
As long as you do seeker before the approval, you are welcome to take them all up.
So I can do all the seeker?
You could do seeker as a package and then each individual approval as a package. Or for the record's sake, it might be easier to do seeker
per
on the
seeker.
approval.
So for each application, you could undertake a motion related to seeker and then undertake a motion related to the decision on the site plan approval.
So, I just got one question. And it's, can I go to the applicant, or do I have to reopen the public hearing again? Can I ask the applicant?
I don't want to
My
disagree with
question
Dan, but
is-
I think you can ask the applicant.
Okay,
It's your floor.
all right, thank you. So, if for some reason we take into consideration what the resident came and said to us, even though she doesn't live at that property, and we take into consideration things like Ellen brought up, what does that cause to you if we, for whatever reason, didn't approve those?
Well, for the St. Paul Boulevard site, we know that then you would effectively be denying service because we can't put that antenna on either of the 2 adjoining poles. It's the only pole that's available in that vicinity of the 3 that are there. And with the other site,
Which means we have no choice but to grant you approval, is what you're saying.
I think that should
We
be.
have whatever choice we want.
Yeah.
He just wouldn't have a cell tower there, right? I mean, that's.
Right.
So the Federal Communications Act prohibits.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
This black thing. That's
Yeah,
what
I'm
you're
sorry.
talking about.
I'm like the microphone police tonight. I do apologize.
You're taking my job.
I do.
So in very broad descriptions, the Federal Telecommunications Act prohibits a municipality from prohibiting cell phone coverage, wireless communication facilities, and access to customers to accessing the network. So oftentimes, case law has found if a telecommunications company can demonstrate that a prohibition a disapproval of an application results in the prohibition of cell coverage for its customers, typically they win that in a court case. However, that is a consideration for this board of whether or not the disapproval of the application would result in the prohibition of cell phone coverage for Verizon's customers.
I don't want to be a part of that.
I think, yeah.
Oh, I'm all down for it.
Okay.
I don't want to tell you what to do, but
I just wanted clarity, that's all. Thank you. So having said that, does anybody have strong objections to any of them?
I mean, no, I'm not saying that I'm not gonna, but it's not like, it is difficult to believe that there is not one other pole in the entire, it's not like we're saying that they can't put an antenna there. Well, that they can't put an antenna up. We're just asking them to look into other options if the board feels strongly about it.
Are you saying that in regards to a certain property that you have an issue with, or you're just
No,
making a
the
general
two
statement?
properties that the other people on the board had brought up.
Okay.
I mean, I guess if they came back again and said, we looked into it again and this is the only option, then it is what it is.
I've seen these things. You'll never notice them.
No.
And I mean, I'm saying that from a person that's a personal thing, right? I have nothing to back that up. It's not a fact or anything.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I was just
Yeah.
saying that I think that I don't feel like we have to feel like we have to approve it.
Oh no,
because
no, yeah.
Not be because there may be other options. That's all.
I'm just telling you from my personal take. I obviously feel comfortable to do whatever I feel, but you'll never you might notice them a week and then they just blend off into the scenery, right?
I agree with Mr. Evelyn, and I think that if they're painted brown, I think that is a huge step in the right direction.
No, I agree. I was just
I
saying
don't-
that
I don't have a problem with any of the locations. I mean, because I think we need, if we're going to talk about this, then let's talk about what location we have a problem with specifically, instead of talking generalities.
Well, it's just the two that they brought up.
Well, then let's talk about one then. If there's an issue, let's talk about it.
Well, to be honest, a resident didn't come, but nobody from those properties came. So I'm not gonna push it. But anybody else? I just wanted to know.
Yeah, no, I
Just
hear
so I
you.
know for the next time. And maybe in workshop, I probe a little bit more.
I hear you.
Anything else? Okay. So, if we could go around the room.
Yeah.
And everybody make a motion for each one of these properties, but please call out the property you're making a motion for.
Absolutely. I'll take a shot at this unscripted motion.
Which one are you doing?
I'm gonna start I'm gonna go in order. Is it okay if we go in order?
Sure.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna start with 1862 Hudson Avenue. So I'd like to make a motion for seeker related to planning board item number PB 1809-4. Site plan review of the micro cell facility located at or near 1862 Hudson Avenue in an R1 residential district. It's an unlisted action under seeker, and after reviewing the analysis contained in parts 2 and 3, I recommend a negative declaration.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Hold on one second. This was the one with the antenna will be on the backside. Do we need to call that out as a condition?
This is for seeker.
This is
Oh, for seeker, sorry. It's getting late. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No abstains, no absent. Okay.
And if
Please
that was
continue.
called out in the testimony,
Do we have to call it out if it was called out in testimony? We don't have to.
It's just easier to do it now.
that it's gonna be on the,
On the rear. The antenna will be on the rear instead of,
in line with the.
The direction of travel.
It's going to be behind the pole in the
line
direction
with
of
the direction
travel,
of travel. Yeah.
as suggested by, I think, you all at your workshop.
Okay, so it's gonna be the way that we would like it.
Yes.
Okay.
antenna behind the pole in direction. of
Antenna
traffic.
and, what did you call that box?
The equipment Shroud.
equipment shroud will be on the back side of the pole.
On the north side. would
On the
be
north, okay,
Best way to put this. That would
All
be
right.
the backside, as you would.
let's get this all worked out before we start. So on the north side, equipment shroud.
This one wouldn't really matter because it's in front of that gas station.
All right, I'm gonna,
Yeah, and the painting of the boxes of brown.
oh man, okay. Are we gonna put those in as conditions? Are those conditions?
You have to put them
Yeah,
on
I
each
think
one.
we have to.
Okay. Let's give it a go.
Painting of equipment brown except the wires.
Okay, let's give it a go. And we'll-
Actually, the meters and stuff stay, the electric meter has to sort of stay not painted like that, but the shroud and the antennas can be brown.
The electric meter can't be brown.
Well, they recommended not.
I think technically RG&E says you can't paint their equipment.
I saw
believe
one on
that's-
St. Paul Boulevard
I-
that's
it
brown
happens
on a
because homeowners
telephone
do it,
pole,
but I
powder
believe
coated.
RG&E does not technically allow it.
Those are the things that are gonna be closest to eye level. I think they should be brown. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
But we agreed on the brown before.
So do we say and meter box if allowed by RG&E?
That's fine.
You gotta give them an out because I don't think RG&E is gonna allow it.
Shroud. And
That would be
meter
fine
box.
with me. I mean, I would vote for that. I don't.
And meter box
How about-
if allowed.
All right, let me give it a shot, wording wise, and you correct me afterwards. Okay? Okay. Upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody, Peabody,
Whatever you want to call it.
whatever I want to call it, acting as an agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown Incorporated, doing business as Verizon Wireless for pre-plan approval, final site plan approval, final site plan approval.
Final site plan approval.
Okay. To locate a microcell wireless telecommunications facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right of way near or in front of 1862 Hudson Avenue, as presented as PB 1809-4, in an R1 residential district. I move we approve the application with the following conditions: that antenna and equipment shroud are located on the north side of the replacement utility pole, that all of the equipment is painted brown color to match that said utility pole, with the exception of the wiring, as allowed by RG&E. Was there one more? Was that it? That was it, right?
Yeah, that's good.
Period. Exclamation point.
Just to repeat the second one for me, please. I'm
That
sorry.
all equipment
Why
is
do you, I think that
Except
they've
the
agreed.
antenna, right? You don't want the actual
They've
antenna
ag-
brown.
No, they've agreed to paint the antenna and the box brown as agreed to, along with, I would separate the other one out, along with the meter box, if
As
allowed
long- how
by.
about-
Here, I got it for you. How about painting of the antenna and shroud
and
the meter box if allowed by RG&E?
I don't think
Or
that
no,
would
that
be-
doesn't sound right.
I don't think the antenna should be brown because it's gonna be hanging off the top of the pole at the top. So wouldn't you want it gray or whatever? Wouldn't that be less?
What,
Like the
we
same
can have them
colors
paint
as
it
sky.
blue with clouds on it.
No. Shouldn't it just be gray
They,
or whatever it comes?
we said brown because.
We did say brown. We
That
did-
was the suggestion. Most people keep it, it's called upstate gray, I think, because of the sky. Most people, you'd be one of the only municipalities that I know of that have changed the antenna to brown. If you want
Let's
it,
stand out.
do whatever you want.
That's what we're trying to hide these things.
Because
Okay.
they blend with the upstate sky, you do whatever you want.
Okay. So we're gonna go with. They're going.
Just think how easy it's gonna be for everybody else,
They're
Mike.
going to paint it's like, what is it? It's 10:30. They're gonna paint the equipment shroud brown. They're going to leave the antenna upstate gray. You better be right.
That's the color.
And paint the meter box brown to match the pole, as allowed by RG&E. that okay?
I don't have to
We're
call
good.
it
I'm
the
looking
antenna.
right at you.
I don't have to call it the antenna. So paint the equipment shroud brown, period, and then paint the meter box brown. Or, telephone brown, what do we call it?
I'm sorry.
Upstate gray
No.
No, we're on the meter box.
We're on the box. It was.
to match.
To match the.
We said matching might be problematic because they're different colors, but to blend, I mean, the dark brown, whatever that is. But
Paint the meter brown, if allowed by RG&E. So it's actually 3, if that's okay.
Yes. We have 3 pieces of equipment we're talking about, right?
We don't have to call it the antenna, because we're leaving it the way it is. Okay?
Yep.
Any?
That's
any
fine.
comments?
That's fine.
So if you, not to put too fine a point on this, but if you want the antenna to be gray, you should specify that since you're specifying the other colors of it. I know Jared loves like a hot pink antenna.
I'm all over it.
Was the gray called
Fluorescent
out
yellow.
on in the plan?
All the different ones, different colors.
Pencil
Did you
point.
bring a palette?
As shown,
Color palette?
it's shown in the exhibit, the simulation.
I would say as shown.
As shown.
As shown.
Oh,
Antenna
The antenna as shown.
should have matched the
to
color of the house.
remain color shown.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Air conditioning, they turned it off to it.
probably. Yeah, they're trying to drive us out.
All right, do I have a second
Sure.
with those conditions?
Somebody second it.
Mike did.
Mike did.
Mike Evelyn,
And
Michael
Palermo.
Palermo. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. One down.
I mean, when you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
To go.
Go ahead.
All right, I'd like to make a motion for seeker related to Planning Board Application PB 1809-4, the site plan review for the microcell facility located near or on 184 Thorndike Road in an R1 residential district. That this is an unlisted action under seeker, and after reviewing the analysis contained in the part 2 and 3, I recommend a negative declaration.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Okay,
Ready for your
continue,
motion?
please.
All right. Upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody, acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown, Inc., DBA Verizon Wireless, for final site plan approval to co-locate a microcell wireless telecommunication facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right-of-way near 184 Thorndike Road in an R1 residential district.
We just did that.
I move that we approve with the following condition. The equipment shroud to be painted brown, the antenna to be gray as shown, and the meter box to be painted brown if allowed by RG&E.
And then it be north.
Not this one.
Not this one.
No, the shroud itself be on the north side of the pole.
Oh, just yeah, they're all that way. They're all that way.
Not all north, but are they?
Well, they're all shown in the direction, all the shrouds
Okay.
are in the direction we want
Great.
them in the applications.
Got it.
Just the antennas we were talking about.
Second.
Yes?
Why can't we do this? I mean, why are we repeating every motion?
I'll let the legal answer that, because I've asked.
I don't understand the need to do one verbatim when they're so repetitious.
So because these are individual applications and the board could deny one and approve the other 6, so it's to to maintain that these are separate applications.
And Michael, just so you're aware, the zoning board went through the same exercise. These are each their own individual application, and so to maintain a clear record for the town, we have to go through the process for each application as if they were separate folks providing us with an application.
If you get a chance, can I get a sharper pencil, please? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
you can
somebody's
donate
got one.
mine.
Thank you. So that was
I seconded.
Reed, Richards. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carries. Okay,
You all set?
yep.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion for seeker related to PB, where am I at? PB 1809-6, the site plan review for a cell tower facility located at or near 180 Wimbledon Road in an R1 district is an unlisted action under seeker. After reviewing the analysis contained in part 2 and 3, I recommend a negative declaration.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Carries. Continue, please.
Upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody, acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown, Inc., DBA Verizon Wireless, for final site plan review to co-locate a microcell wireless telecommunications facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right-of-way near 180 Wimbledon Road in an R1 district. I move that we approve the application with the following conditions. The equipment shroud is painted brown. The RG&E meter is painted brown where possible. The antenna is gray as shown.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay, Nicole, your turn.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Carries. Who's ever next? Mr. Flamer?
Is you next?
Sure.
Do you want this one?
6. So, I'd like to make, a motion for seeker related to planning board item number PB 1809-7. Upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody, acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown Incorporated, doing business as Verizon Wireless for preliminary,
Yeah, you're good.
am I good?
Yeah. Yeah, just go ahead and finish.
For preliminary final site plan approval to co-locate a microcell wireless telecommunications facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right-of-way on St. Paul Boulevard in the vicinity of 11 Daly Boulevard in an R1 residential district. Make this an unlisted action, negative declaration.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Okay. In regards to case number PB 1809-7, upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody, acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown, Inc., doing business as Verizon Wireless, for preliminary final site plan approval to co-locate a microcell wireless telecommunications facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right-of-way on St. Paul Boulevard in the vicinity of 11 Daly Boulevard in an R1 residential district. That we'll paint the shroud equipment brown, the intended to remain gray color shown, and paint the meter brown if allowed by RG&E. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry,
I'll
a second?
it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nay? Carries. Okay. Mr. Palermo?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion for seeker related to planning board item number PB 1809-8. The site plan review of the microcell facility located near 2101 Seneca Avenue in an R1 district. Is that enough? After reviewing the analysis contained in parts 2 and 3, I recommend a negative declaration.
Unlisted action?
Yes, please. I missed that.
I'll second it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No opposed? Okay, continue, please.
Okay. Upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown, Inc., DBA Verizon Wireless for pre-plan approval to co-locate a microcell wireless telecom facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right-of-way near 2101 Seneca Avenue in an R1 residential district.
I'll second that.
No?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you make a motion?
I did.
Oh, thank you. I'll second.
No, he wants to do a couple conditions on
Oh,
that.
you know what, I didn't put any conditions in. And the conditions would be.
I know he does. He was telling me earlier tonight how he wanted to condition this one.
Did you want the antenna brown?
Subtle.
No.
No, the antenna, he said gray, just like it came.
The antenna should be gray. Do we say upstate gray?
Okay,
But anything else would be brown.
okay. So paint the shroud equipment brown?
Yeah, as well as the meter.
If allowed, correct?
Yes, I get a lot of yeses over there. Where were you guys when I was taking tests?
Keep, the intended to remain gray, color shown.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, that's for final site plan approval.
Final site plan approval. Do you accept those conditions, Mr.
I
Palermo?
certainly do.
I'll second those. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
At 7. Anybody opposed, please say nay.
You're good.
It carries. Mary?
Mr. Chairman, I'm gonna pass over to Brad because I'm in so much pain I can't talk.
No problem.
I'd like to make a motion for a seeker related to PB item number
Just get up and go.
1809-9, the site plan review of the microcell facility located at or near 2523 St. Paul Boulevard is an unlisted action under seeker. After reviewing the analysis contained in parts 2 and 3, I recommend a negative declaration.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Upon the matter of request
Hold
by,
on one second, Brett. This is one that the antenna will be on the backside.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown Incorporated doing business as Verizon Wireless for pre-plan approval to co-locate a microcell wireless telecommunications facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right-of-way near 180 in an R1 residential district near 2523 St. Paul Boulevard in a R1 residential district. I move we approve the application with the following conditions: that the equipment be placed on the back of the pole when driving through on
That would be south.
south side of the pole. That the shroud be painted brown, that the meter be painted brown if allowed by RG&E, and that the antenna remain gray as depicted.
Second.
And that's for final.
Yeah.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed, please say nay. Carries.
Moment of redemption.
Who would like the honor?
I'll
And this
do it.
one would be,
Oh, please.
I wrote down, I don't know if we need to carry the shroud cabinet pointed at side. Is that what you said?
I think it's as depicted, so I don't think we need to say anything.
Right.
Okay.
Regarding seeker upon the matter of PB 1809-10, requested by Nixon Peabody, acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown, I recommend to co-locate a micro cell wireless telecommunications facility on a replacement utility pole in the right-of-way in front of 2924 St. Paul Boulevard in an R1 district. I recommend an unlisted declaration with a negative action.
I want an unlisted action with a negative declaration. Okay. Second, do I have a second?
Second.
Flammel? Thank you.
He's just testing all of you.
It's testing. See?
Continue, please.
Upon the matter requested by Nixon Peabody, acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown, Inc., doing business as Verizon Wireless for preliminary and final site plan approval to co-locate a micro-cell wireless telecommunications facility on a replacement utility pole located in the right-of-way in front of 2924 St. Paul Boulevard in an R1 district. I recommend that we approve with the condition of painting the RG&E meter brown if possible. The antenna gray as shown. And the shroud painted brown.
And this one is on the back?
The equipment is on
It's on, yeah,
Depicted?
It's fully as depicted, we don't have to say
it's
anything.
fully as depicted. Placement fully as depicted. Just a second.
Hold on a second.
I would
I'm
gladly
looking for a
second
second.
that. I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Second, if you didn't get it. Get it.
I got Reed to the second on that one. That's for final site plan?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye very loudly.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye, aye, aye.
None. Carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to close.
If I bring donuts, can I get on the first of the agenda?
It's gonna take
Talk
more
to
than
the
donuts
chairman.
now.
Will you talk to the chairman?
For town board, it'll be an item for, under community development, I believe, because they closed the public hearing.
To fix these.
So you'll be early on.
Thank you for hanging with us.
Thanks.
Don't ever do that again.
Okay, we have one last matter. There's some minutes dated Monday, August 27th. I have about 10 change, no.
No, I have 4.
Do you have 4?
Yeah, I really do.
Oh, boy, go ahead.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And you thought you were last.
I'm sorry.
No.
The first case, the 6th bullet down, why does there have to be signage ion? It should just be on. The next
sorry.
one down,
You got them?
border does not need the A in it. In either. There's one at the middle of the sentence and one at the end of the sentence. Border should be spelled B-O-R-D-E-R. And the first bullet on the back of the page says north entrance and south is entrance. Those should be capitalized. And so should actually in recommendations heading north, that should be capitalized as well. That's it.
Do I have a motion? Reader?
Motion to approve the minutes from August 27th, 2018 as amended.
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Oh, I'm gonna abstain.
No?
All those in favor?
Oh, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed?
And I'm abstaining.
You're abstaining?
I think Mary should make the motion to close.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Mayor.
Motion to close? All those in favor?
Second.
Motion to
Aye.
adjourn.
Do it.
Opposed?
Aye, bye.
You're in white.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Irondequoit Planning Board on ICAT, Government Access. We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Irondequoit Planning Board on ICAT, Government Access.